you all. Now, I'm hoping I can get through a show here this evening. It has been quite the work week, so happy to be able to join you. Now, as you all know, I got a big show coming up November 2nd, my 24-hour show. So, had some preparation going into that, some things going on behind the scenes. I think it's going to be a good show. But tonight's going to be a good show as well. So, still not home. Work's been crazy. So, we'll stall just for a few minutes and get people in here. Did get a chance as a lifelong Pittsburgh fan. Looks like my Pittsburgh Penguins not doing so great this year, but the Steelers look okay. Russ Wilson, man, he's looking good. I know most of you don't follow football. By no means am I a huge fan at this point anymore, but it's something I like doing because some of my clients at work that I help work with, they get into football, and it's also something that a lot of friends that I used to communicate with through college, high school, we're in like a fantasy football league. My team's wretched, by the way. Last night I needed my tight end, the Steelers tight end, Fryermuth, to get me 6 points, and I think he got me 4, so I lost the game. I don't really care. But it's just fun to sort of have that amount of camaraderie through something that I could do even while I'm at work. Some about that, like, I can't wait for my son to get a little older and to maybe simultaneously watch a movie, or what I really want to do is be able to read books to him while I'm at work, like on FaceTime. But a lot of times when you do these long stretches at work in the field of home health care, particularly with people with developmental disabilities, it could get very repetitious and it could feel very isolating at times. And so just something little to keep yourself connected to other people, I think, is something good. So I'm excited though. Tomorrow will be my last day for work, and then I'm taking a week off. Granted, much of that time will be put into shows around the election and the election itself. But is there a scenario where I'd vote for Democrats? Yeah, not nationally, but I could see myself. You don't understand where I live. Like, Democrats that run for office are like Republicans with one small difference. So they'll be like, I'm basically a pro-life Democrat, and I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I'm pro-free speech, but I think we should take a little more money and put it into, some hiking trails, and our opponents think that we should, put it into the fire department, so at the local level, there are certainly people that run as a Democrat that I would consider. Now, I'll be honest, most of the time, that's not going to happen. Most of the time, I would still end up voting Republican anyways. And the Democrat that's actually running for the local election for the state house, we've had an incumbent that's in my county that's been there for years, I think over a decade. She's retiring, not seeking re-election. And so the Republican that ran's fine. Actually, one of my better friends' cousin was running, and he didn't. We watched some of that debate on my channel. I don't know if y'all remember. But he's going to win in a landslide. My friend's cousin didn't win the primary, but the Republican that won the primary is a decent guy. He's going to win in a landslide. But he's running against, I'm going to try to be as polite as possible, a radical trans activist is the Democrat ticket, and it's not going to do well at this point, thank goodness, in this area of the world. So instead, it's been a lot of playing the victim, and I don't know what to say. I talked about that during the primary procedure because there was a debate offered up that we analyzed on channel, and the Democrat was invited, even though they were running unopposed. They were invited to the Republican primary debate, and instead of showing up, they wrote a big screed where they answered the debate questions through this writing that they did and claimed that the venue would not provide security for them as a trans person, and they knew that the audience would be rabid anti-trans people that would try to physically assault them. So, yeah, that's... And then if you watched the debate, you saw the audience was basically a bunch of harmless 50 to 60-year-olds that were just like, I'm interested in hearing some of the local stuff that you would be doing. So that radical stuff, at least bearing its ugly head here, but To answer the question, hypothetically, in a local election, I could see if it was someone I knew and I thought that their policy seemed reasonable, I could vote Democrat. I could also vote Democrat in the sense that someone broke through the Democratic Party that would be what I would consider a populist and would actually be interested in fighting corruption in the establishment institutions. And they were running against what I saw as an establishment Republican. So, for example, if Mitt Romney is the Republican nominee in 2028 and the Democratic nominee is RFK, even though I heavily disagree with some of RFK's policies, including on the Second Amendment, I would choose him over the Republican. And I've certainly voted third party many times over the Republican. So anyone who knows me knows that I'm not a big Republican all the time guy. I think that right now, because largely the movement that was represented by Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, which is bigger than just Trump. The MAGA movement. What's up, Frank? It's good to hear from you. Hey, I'm going to be shooting you and some other people in our group a text message here, Frank. If you stick here for a couple minutes, I'll explain it here in a second after I get finished answering this question. But long story short, to me, there was this big question of, if you really are interested in challenging the establishment, do you go third party or do you try to work within one of the parties? Because I was always a big Ron Paul guy. And I think that the MAGA movement breaking through in the Republican Party, to me, represents the best chance of getting people at the national level that are at least, at face value, willing to challenge the establishment orthodoxy. So I hope that answers your question. Now, real quick about what we're going to do with the show here. I promise I'll dive in about 5 minutes. We'll talk about the issue that I want to talk about today. But I wanted to outline what's going to happen the rest of the week here. So I don't know what's going on ever since I did these 2 debates last week. By the way, I get a lot of people ask this. I have a great editor named Black Elk who takes bits of my live stream and makes them into regular YouTube content that's like 15 minutes. So a lot of people will see those clips of like, counter thriftity or something, a little clip from a debate I did, and I'll see in the chat, they'll say, where's the full debate? Any live stream I do on YouTube, if you click on my channel and then click the live panel, you'll see all of the live videos that I've done. So very rarely, unless something comes up, do I delete one of those. If you're missing one and you're like, I remember Rob doing this and it's not there, it's probably because I got some kind of community strike and it had to be removed. But that's where you can check out that debate. Those debates. Anyways, ever since those debates, I've been getting a lot of debate offers, and I thank the people that are giving those debate offers. And I'm not running from debates. The problem is, I think tomorrow night I had a guest lined up that I think fell through, but I have a guest lined up for Thursday. Friday I'm not streaming. Saturday I'm doing a 24-hour stream. And that stream's not going to be debating. That's going to be lining up a bunch of guests with the goal of getting out the vote for Trump and Republicans, particularly with a focus here on Pennsylvania, but nationally as well. And then obviously because of that, I'm probably not going to be streaming. So I definitely am not going to be streaming Sunday. I'll be sleeping. And Monday, I don't know. If I stream Monday, it's going to be the day before the election. Then the election night, I should be streaming. Because of that, I don't really have time. I get all these people reach out to me all of a sudden. They're like, we want to debate. We want to debate. So sadly, people, unless someone calls in and I got some free time tomorrow and they just call in on the Discord, probably not going to happen. And I unfortunately had to tell people that. Normally, if you're one of those people, normally I'll take on all comers. So you could believe that if you want, or you could say I'm running from you and tell everyone that Rob Noor ran from you in a debate. You could do that too. I don't care. Whatever makes you happy. But that's the gist of what's going on. Frank, the reason I was saying I was going to reach out to you, what I'm trying to do is line up a bunch of guests for my 24-hour show. So remember, that's going to be Saturday, 8 a.m. Eastern time, straight through till Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So it's actually 25 hours because at 2 a.m. we'll have to turn the clock back because it's that daylight savings time garbage. So it'll be 24/25 hour stream. And what I tried to do was line up different types of guests. And so I got a lot of people that are involved in the Republican Party in Pennsylvania. so far that are confirmed, I think, pretty consistently. And then I wanted to reach out to people that sort of I know from the streaming world. So people like Let's Be Frank, um, you know, Sarah Kane, see if she's interested, Drone Tech, Aircraft Sparky, people like that. Some people from the Crucible, Andrew Wilson, Rachel Wilson, maybe Jim Bob. So I'm trying to reach out to those sort of people, but I wanted to get the people involved in the Republican Party in Pennsylvania first and get them confirmed, because generally speaking, the way it works is they're going to be very busy, I would assume. So most of those people are going to need a time slot that's like during the day. So like maybe between the hours of like 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I'm trying to fill out those slots, and then I'm going to reach out to my friends that stream and see if we could fill in some slots around those. Of course, if there was downtime, I could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So it doesn't matter. I'm still going to give you the content, and it's still going to be a 25-hour stream, 25 hours. So looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I got some really cool guests confirmed. I think I'm going to, in addition to just a lot of people that work in the Republican Party in Pennsylvania that will be working the polls, I think I have 2 sitting U.S. congressmen that are going to be doing the show, and both have done the show before. So I'm pretty sure that their confirmations will actually come through. Obviously, anything could happen. I don't want to promise to you that someone's showing up and then they not show up, but I have received confirmation and they've done the show before. So that'll be my congressman, Glenn Thompson, and then a congressman I've been at many events with and talked to personally one-on-one named Dan Muser. Both Republicans. Glenn Thompson is the longest serving Republican in the House of Representatives from Pennsylvania. So interested to get their takes. In 2020, when I talked to Glenn Thompson, he had to leave a couple minutes early because he was getting on Air Force One with Trump. So who knows, maybe he'll be with Trump again at a rally. I'm not quite sure what the rally schedules are for Saturday, Sunday yet. So who knows, there's always a chance we could talk to some people at a Trump rally that are there live as well. So I think it's going to be a good show, and the theme of it is trying to drive the message out to get people to vote Republicans and to vote for Trump in this election. So I'm not going to be grilling these congressmen. What about this bill you voted for? It sucked. You know, why would you support Mitch McConnell? We need different leadership in the Senate. You're not going to see a lot of that from me because I understand the mission. And the mission at this point is to win this election. And then you will see me immediately switch into holding Trump and the other Republicans' feet to the fire. Winning an election is only part of it, but it is the first part. So that will be my attempt. Election day, I will try to stream election day. I am voting in person on election day. And I know a lot of people are like, but you should have voted early. Maybe. But for me, voting earlier was even a more risky proposition because I'm home so rarely. So there's always a chance something could get lost in the shuffle in the mail. And where I live, the polls are never like crazy on election day. The whole process usually takes 3 minutes to get in there and vote. So I will be taking my wife, and the plan is to offer up my services to pick up and drive anyone all day that needs to go to the polls, particularly where I'm from, and I know everyone's almost going to be voting Republican. So that's the plan. I'm going to try this final push to do what I can. I've taken the week off work. I'm going to do everything I can on this channel and then try election day to be pestering my friends and stuff for one day to get out there and vote. That includes my friends that don't live in Pennsylvania. I will be texting and pestering, who I never talk politics with, but I will pester those that I know are likely to vote for Trump. Hey, did you get out there? Come on. You take time out today. I'll tell you funny jokes the whole time. Keep the time moving while you drive to the polls. So that's the plan. So look for a couple people. Actually, the people that offered me, you got called by a pollster. I got a lot of text messages from pollsters, but I haven't got a call. So, yeah. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is Friday night, I will not be streaming, except an old friend of the show reached out to me for a favor, and I have agreed to do this favor. So around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time Friday, I will be one of the hosts and introducers to the final Hippy Dippy podcast before the election. I think that I will be tasked with introducing the people on the panel, and I'm supposed to keep it lighthearted and just make jokes. I will not be debating. I'm sure they would have let me debate if I wanted, but literally Friday night, man, October's a crazy time for me anyways without the election because I don't know what it was about that month, but everyone in my wife's side of the family's birthday's in October. Like everyone, there's like 10 of them. So we're celebrating quite a few of them on the same day, and that's going to be Friday. And seeing as how my wife's generously letting me put all the time into this 24-hour stream on Saturday, I think the least I could do is spend Friday night with her and get a good night's sleep. So I said I can't do the full debate. I can't do a 2-hour debate, but a 10 to 15 minute introduction thing before I go to dinner with my wife, yeah, I could do that. So I'll probably stream that, but I don't know how entertaining you'll find that all. That's it. But anyways, the person that reached out to me was Danabo. Danabo, who, I've had my ups and downs with. I think Danabo's been incredibly nice to the show, though. He basically built my Discord channel, which I criminally underuse. And he's always delivered on anytime I need guests or anything like that for a show. Thanks so much, Emily. I appreciate it. So, there you go. That's the schedule. Let's jump in. Now, big stories today, many of which are right up my alley. We're not going to really talk about them today. So we have Steve Bannon getting out of jail, which goes to the themes of corruption I talk about all the time. Then you had Catherine Heritage had the first interview since the Hunter Biden conviction with the IRS whistleblowers, Shapley and Ziegler. And turns out those whistleblowers that were much maligned, that were attacked by the IRS, that were attacked by the Democrats and attacked by our mainstream media, even after they told you, oh, whistleblowers are sacrosanct. When it came to whistleblowers that blew the whistle against Trump, we have to protect them at all costs. Their word is the gospel. But when it comes to whistleblowers against the FBI that's supporting the Biden family, all of a sudden it was different. And then, of course, you have an absolute bombshell and an unnamed whistleblower from the FBI in the New York, or was it the Washington Examiner or the New York Post? I think the Washington Examiner wrote a story today that they are in contact with a FBI whistleblower who is claiming that actually James Comey personally signed off on starting an investigation into Donald Trump before Crossfire Hurricane. And that story is going, hey, what's up, Max? I just saw your message here earlier today. My work's been crazy the past couple days, so I'll get back to you. I promise I will. It's just been a crazy week for me. Anyways, this story is amazing because it basically is speaking to exactly what I've been saying. One of the things I try to do when I talk and debate people that say that I'm a conspiracy theorist and I believe all this stuff, I try to get little concessions. And I can't remember who it was. There were one or two people that I debated and was like, listen, if we find out that the FBI started this investigation into Trump before they allegedly did, which was like, their claim is it was like July 31st, 2016. If they started it before then they've lied. And that's exactly what's being suggested by this FBI whistleblower. In fact, he says that the IG report, the Horowitz report, that ended up saying that the predicate for the investigation was justified, which I have my problems with, which I've illustrated before. Excuse me. He says that the IG didn't get to really see the actual predicate, of which there was none. They just were like, we're going to investigate Trump just to see what we can find. A fishing expedition, which is exactly what it seemed. And specifically what's being alleged is that there were 2 honeypots sent to George Papadopoulos, which we're told is the official reasoning for the start of Crossfire Hurricane and the FBI investigation into Trump. If before that investigation was legitimately, quote unquote, looked into, they were sending FBI spies, a honeypot's like a woman that they'll send to seduce you. That goes right in line with what I suggested was the most likely scenario. That one, the investigation into Trump started before July 31st. So it was actually, we've still been lied to by the FBI. And secondly, the alleged predicate for the investigation never made sense. If you remember, the predicate was allegedly that this guy, George Papadopoulos, this low-level guy that was working for Trump's team, meets this Maltese professor named Joseph Mifsud, who has like people around him. It's going out to dinner or whatever. And Mifsud's basically like, hey, I know a Russian that would like to talk to you, and maybe they got some information that could help. So Papadopoulos meets this alleged Russian, and the Russian says something to the effect of, we have emails on Hillary Clinton. And so then Papadopoulos is sitting at a bar drinking, and this Australian diplomat with ties to the Clinton Foundation comes up, strikes up a conversation with him, and Papadopoulos drunkenly is like, this Russian told me They got dirt on Hillary. And that's it. That was the predicate. What a coincidence that the person that reported it, Alexander Downer, this diplomat who had been involved with the Clinton Foundation, is chummy with the Clintons, he didn't report it to the Australian government. No, he went right through his back channels to get to the United States to report this. And what I alleged that the most likely scenario was, when you look at the character of Joseph Mifsud, who literally would have been the criminal mastermind behind the entire Russia collusion situation that we're told was the biggest story in the country for 4 years. The guy at the center of it, the spy that was working for Russia, who, by the way, was a professor in institutions that have connections to Western intelligence, including MI6 and the CIA. This guy was actually a deep Russian plant. And yet, when the FBI interviewed him and admitted that he lied to them several times, they decided not to charge him. Now they can't find him. He's just in the wind. When Mueller was asked, why didn't you charge Mifsud? He was like, we don't talk. He got all angry. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about specific charging decisions. And I'd been saying for years, the most likely scenario is Mifsud was Western intelligence. He was sent as a spy for either the CIA or MI6. He fed the story to Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos then repeats the story to another person that's on the Clinton team, Alexander Downer. The whole thing was a setup from the get-go, is what it looks like. And now, that's been my theory. That's what I said is the most likely scenario. And now we have an FBI whistleblower saying they lied about the predicate. There never was a predicate. They were sending spies to talk to George Papadopoulos well before what the predicate for the investigation was. Now, that doesn't allege that that spy was specifically Joseph Mifsud, but it strongly suggests that my theory is going to be bore out to be correct. But that's all you get today, the Cliff Notes version of that. If you're interested in those sort of topics, we'll probably talk more about that tomorrow. Obviously, I can't bring up that reporting and anything because I'm streaming right now mobily on my phone. But one of the things I can talk about is jokes. Jokes and jokes! I can talk about jokes. Now, for those that don't know, one of my bigger passions in life is stand-up comedy. Used to do stand-up at open mic night. I was terrible. I was vulgar. I told jokes that would get you canceled, and I'm sure some of them were filmed. Sometimes I'd be blackout drunk. Whatever. I don't care. I always loved stand-up comedy. I love sketch comedy. I love stand-up comedy. I'm a big fan of, all forms of comedy. I really am. Particularly stand-up. It was something that I always really, just for some reason, was always really into. I remember younger than I should have watching Eddie Murphy Delirious. That was like the first stand-up I remember watching. I remember watching with my dad and my mom Gallagher, the stand-up comedian that smashes the pumpkins. I remember watching Louis Anderson. And then when I was like in high school, I remember getting like Louis Black, the Black Album. I was really into Louis Black. Bill Hicks, one of my favorite comedians ever. I like the comedian Doug Stanhope. I've gone to see him do stand-up several times. Just a big fan of stand-up comedy. So as you know, it appears that the Democrats' final message to the American people is Trump's Hitler. That's what Kamala's saying right now. I'm assuming at her rally in D.C. that I'm not watching. Trump's Hitler. And they're going to be woke scolds that are humorless. The Party of Joy is going to say, oh my God, jokes. So we have two examples of that from the past couple days. Now, first, I can deal with this because I'm a professional and I like trolling these moron lefties. But you shouldn't be talking about this story that much because it feeds into what they're trying to do. They're trying to shape a narrative. The truth is, no one really gives a shit. They're going to try to drum up outrage over this for the sake of it. Their message is, a comedian told a joke, vote Kamala. Let's say you're Puerto Rican and you're listening right now, and you're in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of Puerto Rican nationals, people that were born in Puerto Rico that live in Pennsylvania. They're eligible to vote, American citizens. And let's say that you didn't know who to vote for, and now you've changed your mind because Tony Hinchcliffe made a joke. Being upset over that joke's not going to make your groceries more affordable. It's not going to change Kamala Harris and the Democrats' radical LGBT trans agenda. It's not going to change that. It's not going to force them to secure the southern border. It's not. They're pandering to you. And this is what they always do. They scream racism and they pander, and then they don't give a crap about you. That's what happens. So, take it for what you will. For those that missed, Tony Hinchcliffe has I don't know what you call it, comedy show, podcast called Kill Tony. You may have seen clips from it. Probably the clips recently that you may have seen is the comedian Shane Gillis, who dresses up like Trump and does a Trump impression. And I forget the gentleman who does a Biden impression. So there's like some really funny bits where they're being Trump and Biden. The gist of the show is they'll bring on like up and coming comedians to start to do a little, it's sort of like the old Gong Show maybe, which I'm really dating myself. They'll bring up like these up and coming comedians and they'll be like, make us laugh. And if they're not funny, they'll brush them off the stage, whatever. Adam Ray's the guy that does Biden. So there you go. Tony Hinchcliffe himself, who does this show, is really what I would call a roast comic. He is someone who specializes in sort of offensive humor, mocking people. I have different feelings on that. Probably my favorite comedian is Norm Macdonald, who sadly passed. Norm wasn't a fan of the roast. Norm would make some really offensive jokes, but the roast platform wasn't really his forte. On the other hand, some of the roasts, I think, could be quite funny. I was roasted once by a bunch of friends of mine for a party we had. I wanted to be roasted, and so I had a bunch of friends do that, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And it was basically them like just picking on everything they could think of me. There is something about humor, particularly, I can't speak to anyone except myself, I guess. For me, and I think that this is true, maybe predominantly men, I don't know. Something about humor is bonding, right? Like, there's this Professor Zizek. You may have seen him debate Jordan Peterson at one point. And Zizek was this dude that we used to cut evidence of his and run and debate a lot. Really, really kind of out there guy. He's got a movie, if you'd like to watch it, it's interesting. It's called A Pervert's Guide to Ideology. And he basically is taking clips from movies and then talking about ideology and stuff. It's interesting, I thought. I don't subscribe to many of Zizek's beliefs, but he's an interesting guy. And he told this joke, or he told this story once. I'm going to butcher this. I don't know what Zizek's ethnicity is, but he is, I believe he's Eastern European. I could be completely wrong about that. But he describes this situation, and as someone who's lived in rural Pennsylvania my whole life, it's hard for me to relate to this. But I've heard people say this that I've met that live around the world. There are areas of this world that to me and you and the untrained eye, two people look and sound almost identical as far as you would say, oh, you're both of the same race. You're both maybe from the same country, the same culture. And they're not, right? In fact, they might be very similar, but there's a lot of hatred. When it comes to racism, actually the United States is pretty good because there's a lot of countries that just don't fly. They don't like the country right across the way. They don't like the community right down the street. And so Zizek's talking about working with this, I believe, a professor he was working with. And they had to work, whatever they were doing, it was like a couple weeks that they were working together. And he's like, we had this very cordial professional relationship. And he's like, one day the taxi picks me up after like a week, and he picks me up and we go to the house like we always did to pick him up for a day to work. And he gets in the taxi, and he was of this ethnicity that traditionally is with an ethnicity that is conflicting with Zizek's. And he says to Zizek, do you know how you people jerk off? You dig a hole in the ground and stick your thing in it and wait for the world to turn. So it's like a lazy joke, right? Basically, or a stupid joke. Like maybe you've heard Polish jokes. It was a joke like that. And Zizek like immediately responds, Serbia and Croatia, is that what it is? Zizek immediately responds like, I don't have to do that, I was banging your mom. And they just both laugh. Now, these are guys that are like weird philosopher, like professors, and they're telling these very crude jokes. And Zizek's like, that means something though. That was when we first developed a personal relationship. That joke broke through these sort of, and I see a lot of that in comedy. Even in race comedy, I see that a lot. I see a lot when I watch the Chappelle show and he's picking on white people and black people and Asians and Jewish people. Like, to me, that's a good way of like, it breaks this barrier. Now, I know it's not the same for everyone, and humor is subjective largely, and some people can take offense at things that others don't. But I've always liked that. I always felt like I was closer to someone that could make fun of me than someone who wouldn't. Now, sometimes it doesn't come off that way. Certain people could tell jokes to you that they're your friend, and then if someone tells that same joke that's someone you don't know, maybe you get upset. That's sort of the idea of where I think comedy comes from. I'm the type of person that thought it was funny almost immediately after 9/11. Another comedian I really like, Gilbert Gottfried, was doing a roast, I believe, of Hugh Hefner, and 9/11 had just occurred. I was a senior in high school, and so this is one of the first like sort of events. Because for those that are maybe a little younger, you might not know this. It was really weird after 9/11, where it was like, could you do public sporting events? Could you do public entertainment events? It was weird. You know, I remember I was a big wrestling fan, and WWF had a big moment where they had their first live wrestling show after, and it was a big moment, and they honored the people that had fallen, and it was very patriotic. And then I think it was Sammy Sosa for the Cubs ran out in the field, and just like it's a really moving video. You just watch this guy, and it's stupid. You're like, what does this have to do with anything? And I certainly am not a Cubs fan. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, so I'm not a big Cubs fan by any stretch. But there's Sosa, and he's holding an American flag, and he just dead sprints the whole way back and forth across the outfield. Or after the Boston bombing, Big Papi, David Ortiz for the Red Sox, was famously like, F you, and like it was this moment where people came together. That stuff's real. It's stupid. It's emotional based, but it's real, And so one of the things that happened was, okay, sporting events, things like that. But what about comedy? How do you laugh? And so this Hugh Hefner roast, everyone's not bringing it up, the elephant in the room that 9/11 had occurred. And Gilbert Gottfried stands on stage. And it's hard to even find this on tape. Who's also passed, by the way, Gilbert Gottfried. And I can't remember the specifics of the joke, but I remember seeing it. And he was like, sorry I'm a little late. Oh, I don't remember seeing this part. I remember seeing the next part, just to be clear. Because I don't think this aired on television when I was young. He said something effective like, sorry I was a little late. I was taking the airplane past the towers. And the crowd just boos. And he gets real silent. And he proceeds to tell this joke, the aristocrats. I played baseball when I was young, but I was never very good. I played football more than baseball. And the aristocrats joke, I'm not going to get into it, but it's a horribly offensive joke. And the premise of the joke is it's a family trying out for a talent show, and they do the most grotesque sexual acts you could imagine to each other. And the longer you make you make the joke as long as possible and as grotesque as possible. And then the punchline is the talent agent's like, wow, it's very interesting. What do you call your act? And they're like, the aristocrats. And that's the joke. It's this fancy sounding name for all these discussing. The joke, it's a meta joke. The joke is the stupidity of the joke is what makes it funny. And the crowd goes nuts. And objectively, that joke's not that funny. But what Gilbert Gottfried was saying without saying was, we got to laugh again. You have to be able to laugh. You have to. You have to be able to mock 9/11. You have to be able to be crude and stuff in this moment. And to me, he was right. That resonates with me. Maybe it didn't resonate with everyone. I didn't lose family in 9/11. I lost friends afterwards in the wars afterwards, but I didn't lose anyone on 9/11. So I don't know. But that's where that comes from. My admiration for comedy, bringing people together, even offensive comedy, make fun, and my criticism of comedy that's directed towards groups that I like, such as Trump or Trump supporters. Basically, my criticism is that it's old and not funny. it's the same old tired routine. Basically, every comedian since 2016 that you see in like late night comedy has been making the same joke over and over. Trump, Trump, Trump. Some of them I find funny. It's something, I'm not going to use the term, I think I'd be all right, but just in case for terms of service, Stephen Colbert, who I'm not a big fan of or anything, I remember when he said Trump's mouth was Putin's C holster. And there was something about that, except he said the real word. There was something about that term. It still to this day makes me chuckle. It's like, it's funny. It's a funny term to me. I laughed at that. There's certainly things they've said about Trump and Trump supporters that I'll laugh at. But the bulk of the complaints I would have against it's not that funny. But I'm not offended. Now, jokes are different, particularly like when a comedian's telling a joke. That's different than like when you see Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project go on Don Lemon's show and say, people from rural America are all 10-toothed racist rubes that are worried about the brown horde coming across the southern border. That's not a joke. That's someone saying something because they truly believe it. And it's different. So that's where I stand in general on that. Now, this all brings us back to the Madison Square Garden event. Trump's having a rally, and they bring up Tony Hinchcliffe. Now, let me start by saying this. It's a big mistake to bring up Tony Hinchcliffe if you're Trump's team. The free speech and joke advocate of me, comedy advocate, is like, yes, I love that move. But the trying to win the election person is like, Tony Hinchcliffe ain't gonna really fly with like some of the Republicans you're trying to court, like my wife's grandfather, who's probably gonna sit this election out. Probably doesn't help to have this guy telling very crude jokes to that evangelical wing that maybe you're trying to get, or to independents. And you know the Democrats are going to use this if he says anything offensive, which you guarantee he's gonna say something offensive. So it just seems like, a weird strategy. I think I know where it comes from. I think that there's someone in Trump's ear. I've heard it's Barron Trump, but I don't know. But whoever it is deserves a raise. That's told Trump, listen, one way to really get yourself out there is to forget about the traditional legacy press. Do the podcast circuit. Do Theo Von's show. Do Joe Rogan's show. And that's been amazing. That's spot on. That kills two birds with one stone. The first bird is stop giving these mainstream outlets that hate you any oxygen. Screw them. They're propagandists for the establishment. Don't pay them any heed. So great. Don't do 60 Minutes. Absolutely correct strategy. Take your voice to the people. The impulses that Trump had in 2016, using at the time Twitter to speak directly to the people, in effect, using the podcast circuit's sort of the new wave of doing that. And it's doubly effective because the large attack on Trump's that he's this like subhuman monster. So it's hard to paint it like that when he's talking about MMA with Joe Rogan. So I think that's smart. But I think in that vein, the problem is even if you have an effective strategy, sometimes it's hard to get the specifics. So I think if you're a Joe Rogan, a Theo Von fan, who's in that sort of circle, well, Joe Rogan does Kill Tony. He's done it several times. And that's sort of a young, hip, up-and-coming comedy show. So bring on Tony Hinchcliffe. I can see where it comes from. And you're trying to be like, we're fun, we're vibrant, we got celebrities too. But that's a risk. If you know Tony's humor, that's a big risk. So personally, if I was advising Trump's team, I would have been like, listen, at a big rally like this that's going to be, that you want to be nationally televised as one of your final, like I would treat this like you would treat the RNC convention, right? I don't know that I would bring Tony Hinchcliffe on at the RNC, because it's not like Hulk Hogan, who's a celebrity, and it's like just fluff, and it's like, it's not really talking policy, it's just a vibe thing. Tony's going to say, you could trust Hulk's going to kind of stay on message, but Tony's a wild card. So I didn't think it was the greatest idea. However, that's the only oxygen I'll give this story. Tony told many offensive jokes there. One joke he told was about the conflict in Israel-Palestine, where he used a rock, paper, scissors joke to denigrate both Jews and Palestinians. He made a joke that has to do with a certain fruit and people of African American descent. But the joke that he made that is allegedly infuriating everyone is, he said that there's a big floating pile of garbage in the Atlantic. They call it Puerto Rico. And that is where the pearl clutching began, from the party of joy. Now, these are the people that have been telling you, we're running on vibes, we're running on joy. And then almost instantaneously, they were like, oh my goodness. You saw people like AOC that were leading this charge. And it was all obviously fake outrage, designed to rile people up politically. That's all it was. The people, there almost no one that was pretending that has a channel from a little streamer like my size or Pisco way up to AOC. They're not really outraged. They're just pretending. They're clutching pearls to try to make a point. That's it. That's what was going on. The argument seemed to be that they're trying to make is, because Tony Hinchcliffe made a joke, Trump hates Puerto Ricans. That's the argument. See if you can follow. That's their pitch. That's one of the two closing pitches. Now, they have to do this because they can't run on policy, which I think is hilarious, by the way. The Democrats, I can't tell you how many Democrats I've either personally debated or seen say, Joe Biden's top 5 president of all time. Everything, his policies have been tremendous. They're so good that the Democrats can't wait to run away from them. They spent millions upon millions of dollars saying they're the candidate of change. If you're incumbent and the incumbent did very well, you're like, yeah, we're the incumbent. You're not running on change. So they lied to you, and they knew they were lying for 3.5 years. And are you surprised? Because they knew they were lying to you about Joe Biden's mental health and his cognitive decline as well. They don't care. They just don't care. And the fake, they can't even hide their fakeness. It just oozes through. But that was the story. Trump and the Republicans hate Puerto Ricans because they invited Tony Hinchcliffe on stage, and he told a joke that was super offensive to Puerto Ricans. Now, you can analyze the joke. Well, what exactly is he trying to say? Did he screw up? Did he mean Haiti? Because Trump was saying things about Haitians coming in? Well, no, maybe he was specifically talking about Puerto Rico. Because he actually, I didn't know this, but his one friend that does the show with him a lot, that's a comedian, happens to be Puerto Rican, and he goes to Puerto Rico a lot, so he does know that there actually is a garbage problem in Puerto Rico. They're having a tremendous problem with an overfilling of landfills. So this happens to be a situation from a place that he likes, that he knew there were a bunch of Puerto Ricans in the crowd. And so just like when he told the joke at the expense of Jewish people and he knew there were Jewish people in the crowd, and he probably doesn't hate Jewish people, same with Puerto Ricans. He was making a point about something that's real, but it was just sort of a joke. I don't even care to go that deep, if I'm honest with you, though. It doesn't really matter to me. It was a joke. I think that Patrice O'Neal, another comedian that I always really liked, I remember before he passed years ago, him doing an interview where he was saying, you know, I'm not going to do it justice, and I don't know it verbatim, but he's basically like, that joke that you find offensive came from the same place as that joke that you really like, that spoke to you. And you take risks sometimes. And if you're willing to take risks, and this is true of anything in life, if you're willing to put yourself out there, it's not going to be 100% success all the time. Like if you're someone like me and you try to debate as many people as possible, someone's going to beat me on an issue. You're going to sound dumb in arguments here or there. You're going to get people that attack you even if you're not wrong or dumb. You're going to have certain arguments or shows that just aren't that good. That's what happens when you put yourself out there. If you're an artist, you're going to have a painting that's not that great. You're going to make a song that's not that catchy, that's not that good. It just happens. That's why, you know, when I had that show on The Crucible, my debate show, the panel show, it was called The Arena. And it's inspired by the Theodore Roosevelt speech of the same name. Where what he's saying is, if you entered the arena, you're better than the critic that is unwilling to do so. The person that never enters the arena never tastes victory or defeat. So if you enter the arena and you lose and you fail, At least you were in the arena. And I think that that's very inspiring to me. That's what that's what I do. I put myself out here. Who am I? I'm just some humble hillbilly. That's it. I'm just a regular guy. And I try to come on and I talk to people. I don't have the biggest audience in the world, but sometimes I debate people with huge audiences. And I'm like, let's do it. It could make you nervous. It could take preparation. All of this is true. My 24-hour show, Saturday, it could suck. But we'll never know if I don't try. So that's how I've always viewed comedy. Now, it is true that it's subjective if you find something funny, and it's subjective if you get offended by something. Someone can tell fat jokes to me until they're blue in the face. But if they tell a joke about my family, about my child or my wife, maybe that's different. But what if it's a friend of mine that tells a joke about my wife? Then that's different. So there's all of these little subjective things that go into it. But what I think is absolutely absurd is taking someone like Tony Hinchcliffe, who's made the most offensive jokes you can imagine at basically every group, and claiming that him making this joke means that the people that brought him on stage, in this case, MAGA, Republicans, and Trump, hate Puerto Ricans. That's absurd. Now, there's two people specifically that I want to talk about their reactions to this in a negative light. The first is, who's probably leading the charge in the national stage, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. AOC has been drumming up, and I'll be honest here, I know someone's going to call me a bigot for this. I don't know exactly what AOC's heritage is, but I do believe she's Hispanic, but I don't know where her roots lie, where her ancestors lie. It's not, Alex, I don't disagree. Why give them fuel? I already explained why I thought they brought him up. Is Puerto Rican? Okay, so maybe she is Puerto Rican, okay? So she's been out there trying to lead this charge and make it a big issue. And again, they have to because they don't have policy. So this is what I found hilarious. And you can go to X and you can see I did a little video on this. So my short from yesterday on YouTube, which I've also put on X, is about AOC's take on this. She puts a take up that's basically like, oh, you bash Puerto Ricans, and blah, blah, blah. It's their post and how terrible it is. And vote Kamala. Yeah, okay. And then she puts a post underneath it, like on the same thread. And she's like, oh, and I don't want to hear that I don't have thick skin. I'm from the Bronx. I've been to Kill Tony twice. So that sort of humor doesn't offend me. Wait, what? Excuse me? Now, it'd be one thing if AOC's argument was, oh, this gentleman is so racist and so offensive. How could anyone ever enjoy this or go see this sort of stuff? To merely bring him on stage proves that you're co-signing off to his racism. But if she's personally gone to his show more than once, what's the explanation? Play this through in your head. Do you think the first Kill Tony show she went to was like the only one in history that didn't make racial jokes? Or sexist jokes? Or homophobic jokes? What do you think the chances of that are? That she attended a Kill Tony show that was basically like an old Jeff Foxworthy bit. PG. Of course not. So that means she went to a show and she no doubt heard him making offensive jokes at the expense of men and women and straight people and gay people and blacks and whites and Asians and Jews and Hispanics or any combination thereof. And she said, ha, that's pretty funny. I believe I'll go again. Does that mean the fact that she supported Tony Hinchcliffe twice while he's making racist jokes means she's knowingly supporting a racist? Or the truth of the matter is she understood they were just jokes. And she understood that that doesn't mean that he hates the groups and is a racist to the groups that he's talking about. And she laughed because she's a human being And she said, I'd like to laugh again. I'll go to that show again. Nick Costanza says, it was a comedy show and not a political rally. Okay, Nick, so then the question is this. If he tells that same joke at a comedy show, then it's not racist? But if he says it at a political rally, it is racist. Now, this is the number one take that I had from people talking about this. But it was at a political rally, not a comedy show. Right, and so the argument is that appropriate to have at a political rally? It does not speak to the fact of whether or not it is racist or not racist. It's just, is it in good taste? For example, I could tell a joke that uses the word shit. Would I tell that joke in church? Probably not. Does it make me a terrible person that I told that joke? No. You'd say, that's really dumb to say that in church. Really dumb. But it doesn't make the fact that I'm somehow an immoral, terrible person because I said that joke. Either the joke's racist or it's not. Either the joke means that he hates Puerto Ricans or it doesn't. Saying, yeah, but it's a dumb idea to do this as a political rally is a completely fair point, a point which many MAGA people and Trump supporters are saying. That's not the argument that AOC is making. That's not the argument that the Democrats are making. The Democrats are making two arguments. The first is that this is racism against Puerto Ricans. And second is, and because he was brought on a political stage, that means that Trump and MAGA hate Puerto Ricans. That's stupid. You can't make that argument if you yourself are a big enough Tony Hinchcliffe fan that you've paid to go see him twice. So what's AOC's claim here? She never thought Tony Hinchcliffe was racist? He could have told that same joke as long as it was his comedy show and she would say, oh, that's not racism. But then the same joke at a political rally and it's like, now it's racist. And that's the point. When you read AOC's initial post, that's what she's talking about. She's saying, oh, we know that this was basically a Nazi rally. We know that. And we know that MAGA's a bunch of bigots and blah, blah, blah. Right, so the problem's not the joke. The problem is you, AOC, and the Democrats that are making a big deal out of this already had a pre-confirmed theory in their head. These people are all racist. And so a joke that they otherwise would have laughed at, if this same joke would have been told at a Kamala Harris rally, not a damn one of them would have spoke up. They would have said, maybe not the best platform for it, but If Republicans, for example, we have an apples to apples compare, well, close enough. George Lopez, just the night before at a Kamala Harris rally, made the following joke. Let me read Garrett Link's post. Thank you so much for your donation. Garrett says, even Jon Stewart thought it was hilarious and echoed the same sentiment. Probably not the smartest idea, but also not racist. Exactly, and I will bring that up about Jon Stewart. Yes, absolutely. George Lopez gets on stage and says, Trump says he's going to build the wall. But he better build it in one day because if he leaves the materials lying around, you know those Mexicans will steal it. So if I was to say, oh, well, that means that that's not appropriate for a political rally. That's not appropriate at all. And that means that Kamala Harris and all the Democrats hate Mexicans. They hate Hispanics. Get out there and vote. They haven't apologized yet. I've seen Trump's team say we don't stand behind Tony Hinchcliffe's statements. I haven't heard Democrats say they don't stand behind George Lopez's statements. Right? Nick Costanza says, but a Mexican making fun of Mexicans versus a white person making fun of Puerto Ricans is not the same thing. LOL. Of course it's not the same thing. What we're talking about whether or not is the appropriate nature to make jokes like that. So what if we were to find out that Tony Hinchcliffe's mom's Puerto Rican? Then what? What if his wife's Puerto Rican? Then it's okay? Explain this. So you notice how the criticism's an ever-moving ball. This was so disgusting and racist, and I can't believe someone like Tony Hinchcliffe, he's obviously so racist. And it's like, but the person leading the charge, AOC's, admitted that she's paid tickets to go see him twice. So she paid tickets to go see a guy she thought was racist twice. Well, the problem is that he said it at a political rally. Humor like this has no place at a political rally. That's what makes it bad. Okay, well, George Lopez did that. Yeah, but George Lopez is Mexican, so he's allowed. Oh, okay. It's nonsensical. So, again, you can see the real problem, as AOC's admitting, is they're already like, well, these people are all racist. They're all Nazis. And so a joke that they could have told anywhere else, and AOC's admitting, I've seen Tony Hinchcliffe twice. I've seen Kill Tony twice. Yeah, I read some of them, yeah. No, it's not that one's a political statement and the other is not. How is it a political, how's what Tony Hinchcliffe said a political statement? Because it was at a political rally? Then what George Lopez said is a political statement. Unless you weren't responding to me. It was a joke. That's what it was. It was a roast comic making a joke. Again, I can't stress this enough. AOC admitting I've gone and seen Tony Hinchcliffe twice proves that she's not offended by jokes like this. She does not think that that joke, if she would have heard that joke, and I'm sure if she saw Kill Tony twice, she heard far worse jokes. All you got to do is pull up any random episode of Kill Tony, and I will guarantee within 10 minutes you're hearing shit way more offensive than what you heard on stage the other night. I'm actually surprised he was as tame as he was. Which again makes it a mistake to bring that dude on stage. I wouldn't have done it. But it doesn't speak to being a racist, Hinchcliffe being a racist, or the people that brought him on stage. So she doesn't think when he makes these types of jokes at a comedy show it's racist. So there's no reason, knowing that that's the type of person he is, that just because he made that joke in a venue where you'd say maybe not the appropriate place for that joke, that it's all of a sudden racist. And it certainly doesn't make sense that this somehow proves some sort of racism from the people that brought him on, in this case Trump. It's stupid. Everybody knows it. And then she gives the game away by being like, well, we knew it was basically a Nazi rally. Right. So anything that's said is going to be shoehorned into their preconceived political opinion. That's right. They have nothing. So that's AOC. And then let's go to old friend of the show, Pisco. Pisco's leading the charge on X. In all caps, mind you. Oh my goodness! Oh my God! MAGA people hate Puerto Rico. This is what MAGA thinks of Puerto Rico. Thanks so much, Nate. $5 donation. I have immense respect for you, Rob. Jokes are pretty much always okay, with few exceptions. Mehdi Hamas ate some for sure. We'll talk about Mehdi Hassan after this. So Pisco in all caps. Oh my God! And then Jeb Dan, who is a conservative who's not voting for Trump. Not a big Trump fan. He basically is like, dude, it's jokes. Do you know who Tony Hinchcliffe is? This is just a joke. Defend it! This is my favorite from all that. What's the joke? If you didn't get the joke, that's not my problem. The joke was he's being offensive for the sake of being offensive. Just like the joke at the expense of Jews and of Palestinians was being offensive. Just like the joke at the expense of Puerto Ricans was being offensive. That's the joke. What's the joke? I don't understand it. Right, that's your problem. Again, this is the party of joy in all caps. This is all I hate Puerto Ricans. Defend the joke, Jeb Tan, defend it. And Pisco had a call-in show. And so I called in. And then, of course, as always with me and Pisco, it delved into 50 different topics. But the gist of what I wanted to say to Pisco, and at the beginning of it, although there were audio issues, I think, was this. I said, Pisco, I actually agree with you. Really? I said, yeah. Is offensive, and we need, as individuals, you have to stand up for stuff like that. You can't support people that are telling edgy jokes like that are offensive. We can't support them. And I'll tell you what, all left-wing comedians should boycott Kill Tony, because you wouldn't want to work together with someone who's clearly that offensive and that bigoted. Right, Pisco? And he's like, well, I could see it causing people pause. I was like, yeah, I'm glad you agree, man. Incidentally, Pisco, you co-host a show with a guy named Destiny who joked about Corey Compatore, the firefighter that was murdered by a would-be Trump assassin. That said that all Trump supporters are effing around and finding out if they get shot at a rally. Oh, but that's different. That's different. I said I didn't like those jokes. Oh, I see. You see, when it personally benefits Pisco, he's willing to, on one hand, when a professional comedian tells a joke, he takes that as a political rally cry that even to this day, all caps, we must reject this racism, MAGA racism. That's when a stand-up comedian making fun of white people, black people, Jewish people, Southerners I've heard him make fun of, people from red states, Christians, but he makes fun of Puerto Ricans. He's racist. And Pisco can't stand that. And that implies that everyone that brought him on stage is a racist too. But when a non-professional comedian, in this case, his co-host Destiny, I didn't like those jokes. I told him I didn't like those jokes. Then what was funnier, he later admits when he was talking to Jebtan, a lot of what Destiny was saying wasn't a joke. Here's another difference. We have no clue. Perhaps Tony Hinchcliffe has some deep hatred of the Puerto Rican people. Could be true. Now, I've been told that one of his best friends is Puerto Rican. He claims that he loves the place and vacations there. But I'll just say it this way. Even if I say neutral on the topic, I haven't seen any evidence that Tony Hinchcliffe personally hates the Puerto Rican people. I haven't seen any evidence of that. And yet, as even Pisco admit, there's plenty of evidence that Destiny hates Trump supporters. Now, yes, one, and this is what everyone on X says, this is how stupid people are. But Rob, Destiny wasn't brought on stage in a Kamala Harris rally, so that's the difference. That's the difference. Are these people this stupid, which is why they're watching people like Pisco and Destiny? Or are they intentionally obtuse because they know they're bad faith and they're... Or are they intentionally obtuse because they know they're bad faith and they're just trying to make a political argument for their side? I'll let you be the judge of that. I'll make a political argument for their side. I'll let you be the judge of that. Of course, when talking about how much judgment to place on a campaign, I would be absurd for me to link Kamala Harris's campaign to Destiny, seeing as to my knowledge, they have no affiliation with him whatsoever. Where at least with Tony Hinchcliffe, we know that that campaign brought him on stage. The reason I bring up Destiny to Pisco isn't about likening the campaign to Tony Hinchcliffe versus likening Kamala Harris' campaign to Destiny. It's about us as individuals, me and Pisco. I defended Destiny's jokes, much to the chagrin of much of my audience. And I know the Destiny fans that are coping, they think, Rob just fucking hates Destiny and he just talks trash on him all the time. I shit you not, if you go back for 2 weeks after that first assassination attempt, you would be amazed at how many people on my channel that are regular followers were flipping out. Because I was like, listen, the only comment with Destiny that I really am taking... is there not audio? Check, check, check. Can someone tell me if they could hear me? Check. So I have 2 people saying the sound is messed up. Okay. Those of you that are saying the sound's messed up may need to refresh your video. Okay. Sorry. I'm only on YouTube, so yeah. So, okay. Nonetheless, sorry to get distracted there. I defended Destiny on that. I said they're tasteless jokes. I find them to be offensive, but they're jokes. I don't want the dude canceled. The only comment I really was wondering about was when Pisco asked him directly, did you want that bullet to kill Trump? That's not a joke. That's not a joke at all. And I gave Destiny the benefit of the doubt with his, well, I don't know what I can say in terms of service, but... But that's the whole point. What Destiny said is leagues worse than what Tony Hinchcliffe said. And if you're going to clutch your pearls at what Tony... I don't mind you saying, the problem wasn't that Pisco said, I'm offended by Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. He absolutely has the right. And I don't even mind people saying they're offended by Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. And I don't mind people that say, listen, bad idea for the Republicans to bring this dude on stage. That's a fair point too that I largely agree with. What I'm taking umbrage with is being so offended by the joke that you imply that this meant that all Republicans hate, or all MAGA hates Puerto Ricans and racist towards Puerto Ricans. So I'm talking to Pisco as a person. How could you be that offended in this situation with Tony Hinchcliffe, but when someone does something far worse, like Destiny, you're willing to personally work with him? Why? Because you're selling out, because it benefits you. That's why. Now, the truth is, Pisco's not super offended by what Tony Hinchcliffe said. That's the real truth. Pisco's like, whatever. Probably in bad taste. Oh, well. And he wouldn't have batted an eye if Tony Hinchcliffe said that in any other sort of environment. But he's flipping out. If Tony Hinchcliffe would have said that at a Democrat rally, he wouldn't have batted an eye. He wouldn't have said, I think this means that all Democrats are racist against Puerto Ricans. He's just doing it for politics because he can't defend Kamala's record. So this is their closing argument. Racism, Hitler, that's it. That's their closing argument. Same shit. That's the point I'm making. But Destiny didn't get on stage with Kamala Harris. Right, what Destiny said was worse, but you're right. He didn't get on stage with Kamala. That's not the point I'm making. I'm making a point to Pisco directly. If you feel this strongly about offensive jokes, why are you willing to forego your principles when it comes to Destiny? Oh, but I said that I didn't like that joke, and yet you're still working with him. Then he says, well, Destiny, he doesn't make those jokes anymore. He did it yesterday. On X. So, of course, when I bring it up to Pisco on X after our discussion, all caps, oh, blah, 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 you're misrepresenting what I said. Oh, whataboutism. Now, I saw someone said that Biden just said Trump supporters are garbage. That's funny. Which, if that's true, which I can't confirm, I'm just hearing this from people in the chat. If that's true, well, then I guess that means that anyone who's remotely supporting Trump, they now have to say, oh, Joe Biden, who's not a comedian, he came up and said they're all garbage. Let's see how offended people like Pisco are. Let's see how offended AOC is. Right? They'll say, well, in many ways they are garbage. And he meant like not all of them, but the other point Pisco made, which is even more laughable, is he said, well, I haven't seen, the reason that I think that this represents MAGA is because some policy prescriptions they had about Puerto Rico, whichever, it's laughable. And then, because I haven't seen any of them condemn this. And then the next day, Pisco said, oh, look at this. This Republican condemned it. And Trump's team condemned it. And how about that, Rob? Right, that proves how stupid your original point was. His point was, Hinchcliffe said this, and Republicans, this was the point that other people were trying to make too. These crowd of rabid racists were like, yes, Puerto Ricans, garbage. But they didn't. They kind of groaned. There were a couple laughs. If it was really a Nazi rally filled with rabid racists that hate Puerto Rico, there'd have probably been uproarious laughter. But there wasn't. Then we saw a bunch of Republicans, even Trump's own team, come out and was like, nah, that doesn't represent what we think. And Pisco's still like, oh, go look at his post. All caps, we must defend Puerto Rico, vote Kamala. He knows it's bullshit. That's the truth. If you read someone like Pisco's feed, and there's so many of these streamers on the left that this is the case, they clearly are just promoting things that they obviously believe are bullshit. Like there'll be 10 polls that come out that'll say like, Trump's leading Michigan by 1 point, or Georgia by 1 point. And then there'll be one poll that comes out and says, Kamala's winning Georgia by 4 points. And then Pisco will put out like in all caps, like, this is the very realist, most real poll. Finally, the realist poll. And he knows it's garbage. Not that he knows the poll is garbage, but he's trolling. That's what he's doing. I'll be double on notice. Oh, shit. However, here's the last thing I'll say on this particular point of it. How funny is it if it's as I suspect, that the Puerto Rican people and the Hispanic community in this country is tired of the pandering? I don't think this is going to move the needle with most of them. It may. I may be proven wrong with that. But if that's the case and it doesn't really move the needle, this was your closing argument? This is what you talk about 6 days before the election? This is your big argument? Well, at a Trump rally, a roast stand-up comedian told an offensive joke about Puerto Rico. That's it. That's their sales. That's how great of a candidate Kamala Harris is. That's their sales pitch. That's the sales pitch they're making. How funny is it that this is what they're devoting all of their time to? Of course, when they're not yelling about Hassan not being kicked off of Twitch. So, you keep going, man. Keep with that. Jokes are bad, okay? We're the party of joy, but jokes! Jokes! Look, Trump, I still predict Trump will lose. Don't get me wrong. I do. I think Trump's going to lose. I'll keep my sense of humor. I'm not going to let it ruin my life. Hassan didn't get kicked off Twitch. They want him kicked off. Trump is, quote, ahead in the polls that are... I don't think you all are understanding the willingness that Democrats will go to not lose. That's all I'll say. I don't give a shit if the polls say Trump's 40 points ahead. I'm going to choose, unlike so many people that I saw make this mistake in 2020 that were Trump supporters, and unlike Hillary supporters in 2016, I'm not going to sit here going, Trump's ahead! Yeah, he's ahead! I'm going to act with every fiber of my being like he's losing by 3 points and bust my ass to get every fucking ballot I can for Trump to the polls, particularly in my state of Pennsylvania. Anyone else who wants to convince themselves Trump's ahead, you're more than willing to do so. I choose not to do that. That's how I'm going to operate. So if you all want to say Trump's winning, we got this in the bag, like you did in 2020, Sparky, you were there. I was on the shows that were saying Trump's got this in the bag. You go ahead. Yes, I think Trump will lose. Anyways. Of course, the real story surrounding the whole Madison Square Garden event was the fact that it was labeled to be a gathering of Nazis. Now, here's the irony. Would it shock you to know that there were Jews, including at least one Holocaust survivor, at the Trump Madison Square Garden event? And there were gay people, and there were black people, and there were Hispanic people, and there were even Puerto Ricans there. No, they're all Nazis, though. They're all Nazis. How would you feel if you were Puerto Rican? Let's say that you were a Puerto Rican there and you went, hey, I don't like that joke. And then you go home and you find out, you're like, maybe Democrats are onto something. That was a little iffy, that joke. Let's see what they're saying about me and all of my fellow Puerto Ricans that were at the rally. Oh, we're Nazis. It was a gathering of Nazis. And by the way, it wasn't just comedians that said that. Tim Walz doubled down on it today, the VP candidate. That brings us to our second story about jokes. I'm going to screw up a bunch of names in this, so hear me out. The big story last night on CNN, you had Mehdi Hassan, who's hashing it out with Ryan Girdusky, who's like the resident conservative that they bring on CNN who regularly thrashes these lefties they have on these panels. And the panel starts, Madison Square Garden. Did you know that in the 1930s, the Nazi Party had a rally at Madison Square Garden? So because Trump's having a rally there, then they too are Nazis. Right, and forget the Bill Clinton rally that held there and all the Democrats that had rallies there. It's just so dumb. I'm here whining about how you should all have a sense of humor. And what I'm doing is talking about the stupidity of the pearl clutching about it. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up. So this is one of my favorite things. And this is one of the big comments that I had in result of this. When I bring up like, oh, Pisco, you hang out with Destiny with his worst jokes. And then the Destiny fans will be like, look at Rob clutching his pearls. Oh boy, poor sad Rob. Dude, your whole fucking argument, your closing argument is, we're offended by Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. We're so offended. And then when I'm like, wow, you people are fucking hypocrites. This is laughable. You're not really offended. Oh, not me. Okay, you must. Well, I'm glad you brought up the point anyways. I'm sorry if I misread it. That's how stupid they are, right? They're so used to that. It's like when they try to cancel you over and over again. And then finally conservatives are like, well, we don't want to be part of that anymore. And they're like, I thought you didn't agree with cancel culture. Oh! they fear most is the tactics that they employ being used against them. Again, that's why they were so upset about Elon buying X. They totally expect, that's why they're freaking out over the Washington Post and Jeff Bezos not allowing the Washington Post to endorse a candidate. They just assume every outlet has to be on our side. Every billionaire that owns a media empire, they have to be on our side. That's just the way it has to be. So they'll clutch their I'm so offended by Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. And you're like, you guys are hypocrites. Pisco, you're personally working with this guy that's made far more offensive jokes. Oh, Rob's offended by the joke. I'm not. I said Destiny can make the joke. My stance is clear. Your stance is willing to work with someone because it improves your reach to your channel. So you're willing to overlook the joke, but on the other side, you're saying it proves the whole party's racist. The whole MAGA group's racist. So dumb. Anyways, so we got Ryan Gadusky, however you pronounce his name. And Mehdi Hassan's going on about Madison Square Garden Nazis, the Nazi rally. And Ryan says, basically, you're a Hamas sympathizer. I hope your beeper doesn't go off. And for that, they basically stopped the show, kicked Ryan off, and CNN fired Ryan. Now, if you just saw this from the left-wing perspective, what you saw was, oh my God, they're having this civil discussion, and Ryan's basically like, you're a terrorist, and I hope that the genocidal IDF kills you. I hate Muslims and brown people. That's the perspective, and you're like, oh my God. Poor Mehdi and this poor CNN panel, they're just having a sobering discussion about the election and about policies, and this guy comes in with that attitude? Oh my God, that's too much. But then if you saw the context of Mehdi Hassan is calling Trump and all of his supporters that were there at Madison Square Garden Nazis, and Ryan's like, that's garbage, don't call them Nazis. Well, that's how they're acting. And he says, okay, then I'll call you Hamas. And I hope your beeper doesn't go off. For those who don't get the beeper joke, the IDF was targeting people that were involved with Hamas by basically somehow they got them fake beepers that had explosives in them and they detonated them all pretty much at the same time. And the best part of the whole segment was Mehdi asking the host of the show, the moderator, you gonna let this guy do this? You mean after you sit there calling everyone Nazis? Now all of a sudden you're going to play the victim? Now, let's get real technical about this. Ryan didn't say, I hope you die. He said, I hope you don't. Technically. Hardly makes a difference. But for this point, what do you think Mehdi Hassan thinks should happen to actual Nazis? Do you think he would be for the imprisonment of them? Do you think he would be for using violence against them if necessary? If he's likening Trump to Hitler and the goers of that rally to the people in the 30s that were at a pro-Hitler rally, what do you think he would want done to them? So given that the obvious implication of that is something very bad should happen to Nazis, how is that markedly different than what Ryan's saying? I happen to think Hamas are terrorists. I think bad things should happen to terrorists. Is it just if he would have just said, and I feel that you're a Hamas sympathizing terrorist, and I think you should be locked up, would that have been okay? But it just wasn't okay to make the joke, I hope your beeper doesn't go up, which is far funnier. What's the limit here? You can call someone a terrorist, or you can call someone a Nazi. I've tried to get Dave on the show. He doesn't answer. I've sent many direct messages, so I don't know. I even moderated a debate that Dave Smith was on. And tried to contact him immediately following that and still had no luck, so I don't know. But now Mehdi's got a special place for me, and goodness gracious, I hope I get to debate him sometime. I would love to debate this man. Because Mehdi's one of these guys that does this all the time. He says the most vile, despicable shit, and then clutches his pearls anytime someone says something that he disagrees with. For example, Mehdi Hassan thinks the actions of January 6th was one of the darkest days in our country's history. I mean, absolutely despicable that a bunch of these people attacked a building where the people that hold seats of power in this country were. And we have to take it sober-minded and treat it as the threat that it actually was. Incidentally, if you go back to Mehdi Hassan's X account, though it may be deleted now, but don't worry, I took pictures of it. Mehdi Hassan, after a bunch of left-wing rioters, or in their parlance, insurrectionists, attacked the White House, including with Molotov cocktails, so much so that Secret Service had to remove Trump to a bunker, Mehdi Hassan was one of the people the very following day that was making fun of Trump for being a bunker boy. He tweeted out, from hashtag bone spurs to hashtag bunker boy. Wait a minute. So Mehdi's making light of the fact that a bunch of left-wing insurrectionists attacked the White House in an attempt to physically harm our sitting president? And he thinks that's funny. That's grounds for humor. But boy, oh boy, January 6th was the darkest day ever. You see the problem? He called people Nazis, but don't you dare call him a terrorist sympathizer. Don't you dare do that. I hear this all the time. But Rob, you're talking about left-wing rhetoric. What about right-wing rhetoric? It's the Democrats whose entire strategy is Trump's like Hitler. Trump's rhetoric is so bad. That's been their argument since 2016. Then when you point out, let's look at the shitty rhetoric that comes from your side, they're like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Who are you to focus on this rhetoric? Look what Trump says. Okay, cool. Let's not look at the rhetoric then. How about policy? Oh, right. You can't defend that. All I heard about for years, even before Trump, was hate speech. Hate speech from right-wing groups. Hate speech. Then you'd watch social media, and you could see left-wingers beating the shit out of people trying to go to a right-wing rally on campuses like Berkeley. You see, their violence was speech. But your speech is violence. You see how that works? You starting to get what's going on here? So they could call you a Nazi. But if you're like, I think you're... And by the way, is there an irony? I'm not taking a fucking stance on the Israel-Palestine thing. I think both sides have points. I think generally, I think many of these pro-Palestinian people are abject shit. But I also think that Israel has way too much influence over our country. We should stay out of this shit, stop funding both sides of it. So I'll let the two sides fight it out. I don't give a shit, right? As far as I'm concerned. I mean, I care. I don't want to see anyone die. But the people are so ideologically entwined both there and here on it that it's like, what's the point to even try to argue with them? So I don't care, but I just think it's funny. Someone like Mehdi, who probably, assuming, gets frustrated at being called a anti-Semite all the time because he's criticizing them for what he says is genocide, to call other people Nazis, flippantly. The entire Madison Square Garden audience, Nazis. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. How is Trump a Nazi when Israelis all overwhelmingly support him over Kamala? They named a town after Trump. Their arguments are so funny. They're like, Trump, you think his foreign policy is so brilliant. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. That was so, oh my God, it caused such hatred with the Palestinians. Right, so he did something that the people of Israel wanted done for years, but he's a Nazi. Trump Heights is what it is, yeah. In Israel. It's just stupid. You could say he has dictator-like tendencies. He has fascist tendencies. You could say that shit. I hear you, you must. I know. The outrage market is strong. So Ryan Gadurski gets kicked off of CNN. And Mehdi Hassan could peddle his bullshit grievance culture stuff and clutch his pearls anytime someone does the same stuff to him that he does to others. And the mainstream media wonders why less and less people listen to them anymore. You might as well be watching a Jerry Springer episode. I take that back. Jerry Springer was entertaining at times. That's right, MG. It was a tactic that worked, and it's getting less and less effective. You can only go to that well so many times. So we'll watch them clutch their pearls as it goes, Trump's a racist. He's a racist. Of course, then it turns out, if you're to believe Ben Shapiro, Benny Johnson, Tucker Carlson, which I do, a bunch of them have put out messages that they received from a writer at the New York Times, that the October surprise from the New York Times is going to be that they've worked with Media Matters, who's basically just a left-wing bullshit organization that tries to cancel right-wingers. And Media Matters says that all of these right-wingers on YouTube spread disinformation. And are you partnered with YouTube? How many videos have you had pulled down when you spread disinformation? And so the New York Times is working with Media Matters to try to force YouTube to demonetize and shut down people on the eve of an election that they claim is for disinformation. Rachel Maddow, the other day, I think yesterday, had Victoria Nuland on to talk about Russia wanting Trump to win. It's literally the same bullshit. Trump's a racist. Trump's Hitler. Trump's working with Russians. Censor right-wing disinformation. It's been the same bullshit for 8 years. 8 years. The same tired-ass shit. Hey, AOC. Hey, Kamala. If you gave a shit about Puerto Rico that much, what have you done? Turns out they are having a problem with their landfills. What have you done? They're just helpless victims. Oh, there's nothing we can do. But at least we didn't have Tony Hinchcliffe on. They're all a bunch of Nazis. Oh my God, they said something mean about me. I hope the American people are finally had enough of this shit. And if you're wondering, I don't know who to believe. Well, I'm not going to tell you that everything I've ever said has been correct. I'm not even going to tell you that I've never lied. I've lied in my life. It's certainly true. I can't think of an instance where I've knowingly lied on my channel. I can't. Unless it was I guess there could be certain, trans positive Rob has probably in character knowingly lied. Yeah, it is accurate to an issue. Counter-thrifted-y? Yeah, I guess maybe that's a lie. I didn't eat today. There's a lie. That's bullshit, yeah. Listen, you shitheads that make fun of me for my weight. You're going to see me in this 24-hour stream, so hopefully you see how much I eat during that stream. We'll see. Yeah, I mentioned George Lopez, Pat O'Brien. I've certainly said things that have came to that I thought were true that weren't. Hey, this person said this. Then you look it up. It's like, oh, they didn't. Or it was actually someone else that said that. But it's amazing to me how blatant so many of the Democrats, the establishment, the left are with their lies. How many times did you see me on debates like Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline? What? Where? We don't see it. Huh? I remember when Brianna Wu was laughing at me the first time I was on a panel with her and Destiny when I said that they're probably going to remove Biden and it'll be someone else. Oh, conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. I hear you, Achilles. It was fun. Are you shocked that the people that blatantly lied to you? By the way, on that panel, or the 2-on-2 modern day debate I did with the poetry slam expert and the classy neurotic guy, I asked him straight up, do you think that the Democrats knew about the cognitive decline? Yep. And you're okay with that, with them lying? Yep. That's how somebody, it doesn't matter. Orange man bad, he's Hitler. Win at any cost. It doesn't matter. See, I do the voices, it's just like spur of the moment. So when someone asks me to do a voice, I don't know if I can. Rob, it's like a conspiracy theory that you think they're going to remove Biden. Okay, Brianna. Okay. How's that progressive victory money going? By the way, I saw Dick Masterson put out that progressive victory. He said something. You have to go check out his post on X. It was like their last show, our biggest sponsor, like, is furious at us and they're pulling out. So screw you, progressive victory, and your $500. Progressive victory, throwing that money around. The Dick Masterson, good stuff. My goodness. Now, I didn't watch the Dave Smith, Destiny Mediasan debate on Piers Morgan. Damn, I wish Piers would bring someone like me on to argue against those two. Sunday's saying it was erudite? What about erudite? Not Brianna, it was erudite that I don't know. But I would love to be on a panel like that with Piers Morgan. Yeah, I know why Destiny blacklisted me. I know. And that's okay. Yeah, the Act Blue donations are crazy. I need to look more into it. Look, I've had a lot of people saying, what about here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where they're telling people to leave, that people are standing in line for, it's the last day to request for early voting, so people are standing in line. They're basically being told to leave, even though they were told they're allowed to request until 5 p.m. The reason I hesitate to talk about this stuff specifically is I haven't had time to really look into it. I actually heard an allegation. I'll bring it up to you all. Now, I want to preface this by saying this could be 100% total garbage. It's not like earth-shattering or anything, but it's interesting. So there is a Senate race going on here in Pennsylvania between Dave McCormick, who's the Republican candidate, and the incumbent Bob Casey. And it's interesting because Bob Casey hasn't really done any events with Kamala Harris when she's been here in Pennsylvania, which is odd. You would think McCormick's done them with Trump's team. And Casey, if you're reading the tea leaves, it's like, maybe Casey's trying to distance himself from Kamala because the internal polling shows she's not that popular. And to be quite frank, Casey is trying to run a more moderate campaign. So much so that one of his ads that he's put out recently is like, hey, I'll help Trump build his border wall. And it's like got a picture of Trump. Now, that hardly seems like the message that Kamala's team has, that Trump's Hitler. Why is the Democrat Senate candidate? Because, and you could say, well, yeah, but maybe Casey thinks that Trump's Hitler, but he's just saying that because he thinks it'll help him win. Right, that's the interesting part of it, though. I don't give a shit what Casey really thinks about Trump. That's irrelevant to me. The question is, if he's hesitant to do events with Kamala, and he's putting ads out that's like, man, I'd work together with Trump. Maybe he thinks that in Pennsylvania, the Trump is Hitler message isn't that effective. Mayor Adams came out and was like, yeah, this Trump is Hitler shit's stupid. Oh, I didn't talk much about this, but going back real quick, I'll get to my Bob Casey story here in a second. But I didn't talk about this much. Jon Stewart, even, the comedian, political comedian, came out and he was like, Tony, probably a mistake to bring him on stage, but I think he's funny. It's jokes. Exactly. Some people thought it was offensive. Some thought it was funny. Let's not forget. Remember when Stephen Colbert got in shit because he was coming up, like he made some joke about like some Asian author and then gave them a stereotypical Asian name and made Asian sounding names and voices? And he got in all this shit. Like even the left-wing comedians at some point, even like your Bill Maher's, have to be like, oh, shit. And I mean, fuck Bill Maher for a million reasons. But I am interested to hear what shit-lib left-wing comedians that involve themselves in politics, what they'll have to say about the Tony Hinchcliffe thing. Because I think Bill Maher's smart enough to see some of the writing on the wall that the cancel culture is eventually coming for him. Particularly as someone who's Jewish. He sees it. And so it'll be interesting to see what he says about this. Now, I assume he'll bring it up. I think his show's on Saturday, but it is his last show before the election. But I don't know. That's what the Democrat message is, so. But Jon Stewart, for all of the many problems I have with him, at least to his credit on this issue, he's like, he's a roast comedian. And by the way, Jon Stewart thinks he's funny, which, I don't think that those jokes necessarily that Tony told were his best work, but I've laughed. I laughed when he did the roast of Tom Brady. I laughed my ass off. And it was horribly offensive. Nate, for $2. Thanks so much. I plan to write in Post Malone, Tony Hinchcliffe. Don't do that. Vote for Trump. I said if I was going to bring a comedian on to offend people, I'm 40, so no one will know this guy unless you're roughly my age. But if I ran for president and I was bringing a comedian on to offend people, I would bring Tourette's guy up. That's who I'd bring. It's a bunch of shit. It's like fucking pets. That's who I would bring up. And then everyone would be mad at me for making fun of people with disabilities or whatever. That's my style of offense. There you go. Anyways, back to the Bob Casey. So, interesting with this Bob Casey stuff. So I had someone reach out to me and say, I want to tell you something that I've heard, and I'm wondering if anyone else has heard this. So I'll ask particularly my audience members that maybe are here in Pennsylvania. I had a friend who said that he's heard from one person, but this person heard from several other people. That this person's a registered Republican, and they got a call from Bob Casey's team. And the call was like, hey, we're from Casey's team. Are you going to vote? Who are you considering voting for? And when this person basically said, I'm going to vote Republican, I'm voting for McCormick, that this member of Casey's team was like, listen, Bob Casey thinks that Kamala's too radical. And he's like gung-ho for fracking and for oil drilling here in the United States. And he's all about securing the border. But the thing that's interesting is that they literally said, thinks that Kamala's too radical. Now, this might all be BS. It may be. I know that the person who gave me this information is telling me the truth. So he at least heard this from his buddy. But I don't know his buddy, so his buddy could be full of it. He could have made up a story. I don't know. And I don't think this is like any salacious allegation. If it was like, my friend told me that he heard that Bob Casey was having an affair with X, I wouldn't say that because I can't prove it. But this isn't like a scandal of that proportion. But I just wonder, is that normal in an election cycle? Does this often happen where if you're running at a state level and you're making these calls, do you distance yourself from your national candidate? Because that's something that's tough to do on an ad, right? Like to put a 30-second commercial up for Bob Casey to say, I think that Kamala is too radical. He's not going to do that. But would you do that on like a one-to-one conversation? Maybe. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. And you're trying to read the tea leaves. How's this election going to go? Things like that are interesting. Again, I'm going to choose to believe that Trump's still going to lose by a point or two. So people like me will have to do everything possible. Every one of us. Jimmy Dore would have been awesome on stage as a comedian for Trump. I agree. Dave Smith would have probably been pretty good. Dave might have teed off on Trump a little. So may have Jimmy Dore to an extent. Though I think Jimmy would understand. But just in general, like, I'm so tired. Nick DiPaolo would have been great. Shane Gillis would have been great if he could. But he has a similar problem with Tony Hinchcliffe. He might be offensive. Listen, I think this is a very important election. I really do. I say this all the time. You can believe me or not. I think that I'm an incredibly lucky person. Who knows? Who knows what the future? I could die in a car wreck tomorrow. Maybe I'll be targeted if Kamala wins. Maybe they'll go down the list of, they'll get the Steve Bannons and they'll get the Tuckers and they'll get the Elon Musks. And eventually there'll be little people with 100 viewers like me that they'll come after. Maybe. Probably what's most likely to happen is I'll just get my channel banned. But maybe not. Maybe they throw me in jail for something. I don't know. I don't think that's that likely. I think it's more likely that there's just general censorship that's employed that I'll get caught up in. So I don't take it as a viable option that I'm going to get thrown to jail. Maybe 30 years down the road, maybe 10 years down the road, I don't know. Could go the way of the UK and just telling a joke on Facebook will get you thrown in the clink. I don't know. But anyways, as high stakes as I think this election is, as I've said for years why I think the establishment's so bad. I've talked about this stuff for years and years and years on this channel and years and years and years before this. And I mean it. And I think we do have an opportunity. You know, I got to be honest. I still think that if Trump was to pull out a victory, he probably won't do anything incredibly consequential. But I have hope a little for two reasons. One is, at least it delays the authoritarianism. And maybe someone like a Vivek, a J.D. Vance, a Ron DeSantis takes the torch and they're a little more effective. And the chances of them doing that increase if Trump wins. Trump loses, I'm afraid you're most likely to see Republicans in leadership positions take that as a repudiation of Trump and populism and then go the way of the Mitt Romney, the Nikki Haley types. Which then it's, forget about it. But the other thing is, I'm actually impressed with some of the people that Trump's putting around himself. If Trump's really willing to put people around him like Elon Musk and RFK and Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon, I think that those are serious, that could do serious good. Those are people that could do serious good in different ways. That's better than John Bolton and Mike Pence. I thought the best part of the Trump-Joe Rogan interview was when he was the second half of it. To me, the absolute best part, and I know I got shit for this for my little short video, but I guess I haven't talked to you all. I haven't done a live stream since the Rogan appearance. Oh, J.D. Vance is supposed to be on Rogan tomorrow, which is interesting because that'll be running live while I'm probably doing a show. So we'll see. Maybe I'll try to do a show a little earlier, and then me and the wife will watch J.D. Vance on Rogan. So maybe I'll start at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Tulsi, Vivek, yeah, those are good people. Not the best on everything, but better. The best part, so I'll be honest, I don't think he did himself any favors, really, in the majority of the first half of the Rogan interview. I thought that he sort of was less fluid and was sort of... Rogan was clearly trying to keep it personal and wasn't trying to talk about policy as much. And, you know, Trump was sort of, what's he called? The weave was moving around a little, which is okay. To me, it really got interesting in the second part because what an event really is for like that is to humanize you. Thanks so much, Brock, for the $5. Says, do I think Trump would stand a chance if he was running against RFK? No, it would be difficult. Redman, thank you so much for becoming a member. I appreciate it. But to me, the best part, because of that humanization, was when he was talking, I don't remember the specifics, but he's talking about fighting ISIS and how the generals convinced him to get on an airplane and they were going to an undisclosed location in the middle of the night. And he's explaining the process, and you couldn't help but see his sense of wonder about it. Like a regular person. And he's like, they shut off all the lights, like even the normal blinkers, they have these blinker lights, and they shut them off, and it's pitch dark. It's just, I can't do a good Trump voice. It's pitch dark, and we fly in, it's darkest you've ever seen. And we fly in, and he starts talking about these pilots. He's like, they're incredibly handsome. They're just the most handsome men. And you wouldn't believe how good they were. and there's no lights, and I'm like worried, like, are they going to be able to land this? And it was smooth as you could believe. That right there is why so many people that are like working class connect to Trump. Yes, he's saying not Kelly, not Mattis, but some of these generals were good generals. But when he's really praising skill, he's talking about pilots. This isn't 4-star brass. He's talking about the pilots. And to me, you can't fake that. Maybe you can, but he had genuine admiration. And it's like the video where you see he's getting off the airplane and it blows the Marine's hat off and he runs over and he grabs the Marine's hat. That's tough to fake in the moment. And I think that's what so many people, everyone's like, how could you, he had lawsuits where he didn't pay his workers. How could you say he likes blue collar people? Maybe. Look, I'm not saying he hasn't screwed people over. He probably has. Maybe there's much more to that arrangement. Maybe those workers screwed him over. I don't know. But I'm telling you that the feeling that people like me and other people get is this guy doesn't know what it's like to live like me. He grew up rich. I get all of that. But he at least will take time to be like, that's cool what you're doing. Thanks, man. And even if he's lying, that's more than what the Democrats or the traditional Republicans are offering. They treat us with contempt, like we don't exist or we're the problem. And I've said that a million times. That's the appeal of Trump in areas like me. That's why people like my mother and father, who never voted as far as I know their entire life, registered to vote for the first time ever for Trump, and now my mom works at the polls. That's how much they've got involved in politics. And thousands of other people like them in just my little area that felt that they never had a politician at the national level that even gave a shit about them. Now, I know if you hate Trump, you're saying, but Trump's a liar. He's a grifter. Mick Foley said that Trump's lying. He doesn't care. Maybe, but that's how these people feel. And you can think that that's because Trump's just this super gifted liar. But what I'm telling you is the reason that people are willing to give Trump the benefit of the doubt is because there's been so little of that. No one at the national stage ever does that. We're deplorables. We cling to our guns and Bibles. We're garbage. We're 10-tooth rubes. We're uneducated. I love that too. Well, the uneducated are more likely to vote for Trump. Don't you love how they throw that out there with like such contempt? Well, what's uneducated mean? For example, I have a master's degree, and yet many of the people that live around me that barely graduated high school are objectively smarter than me. So what's the education level mean? Oh, I went through more years of indoctrination than them? By the way, try doing that with another group. Try, for example, saying this. Well, black people are far more likely to vote for Democrat, and it turns out, on average, they're far less educated. See how far that gets you. Oh boy, you're a racist scumbag if you say that. Education level doesn't imply intelligence. But that's how we're treated, with contempt. Okay. That's why Trump is someone that people look up to. By the way, for being uneducated, why is it that I whoop the shit out of these lefties 95% of the time when I debate them? Is it because I went to grad school? Is that why? My master's in speech communication. Still paying off those student loans. Biden's going to break the law. I could have at least forgiven my loan. I'd still vote against the prick, but... That's the truth. That's what's going on with Trump. So that part of that interview with Rogan, I think, really resonates. The other thing is those, and I know what people are saying, who gives a shit? What's that have to do with policy? You're right, but the weakness of Trump is his personal character. I've said this 1,000 times. If the election comes down to the record of Donald Trump and his policies versus the record of Kamala Harris and her policies, Trump wins. That's why the Democrats are trying to make it about, but Trump's Hitler. He's a fascist. He's a racist. And so anytime Trump gets in front of people and is just having a normal conversation, it's like, oh, I love this. I see this on X. Hutch just responded to me talking about the whistleblowers talking about the Hunter Biden laptop. There's no way you're still talking about the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2024. LOL. From people whose last argument is January 6, 2021. Yeah, Hunter just pled guilty like, what, a month or so ago? And now the whistleblowers are speaking out about it. And he's like, oh, that's a month ago. That's so long ago. Huh, you're still talking about that? We have to spend all of our time talking about January 6th. They're so laughable. That's the funny, like, listen, I'll tell you straight, we'll get back to the Rogan thing in a minute here. But here's the thing, of all these characters I deal with, right, like, Destiny's legitimately a good debater. And he also is entertaining. You might hate him, but he is entertaining. He is. There are people that hate watch Destiny. That's a form of entertainment as well. And he certainly has a lot of people. And I'll tip my cap. Destiny has built himself a brand, and more power to him. I don't wish any ill to the person. I don't. He's a good debater, too. He is. Pisco's a good debater. He's not as entertaining as Destiny, but I think he's a better debater than Destiny on certain issues. He can be piss annoying, and he's more of a, believe it or not, his persona that he adapts on X, he's more of like a fake, like, bullshitter than Destiny when it comes to his performance on X. But I'll say he's a good debater. Econoboy, and I bring up, these are the people that are on their little group, right? Econoboy, like, he's not that great of a debater. When it comes to economic issues, he's an okay debater. And he's good at bringing some legitimacy, trying to, like, because he understands the language of sort of what it's like to be an economist. And I think Econoboy's likable. Pondering, formerly Ruminate, I think Pondering's likable, and I think he puts the work in. I really do. I think Pondering's sort of doing a show every day, and he's trying to, probably through Progressive Victory, it doesn't matter, though. He's reaching out and he's trying to do stuff, I think he's likable. But out of all of them, what the fuck does Hutch bring to the table? Like, what does that dude bring to the table? He's not as good of a debater as any of those other ones, right? Maybe he's likable when he's doing his video game streams or something. I don't know. But this dude's getting a paycheck from Progressive Victory? For what? Just because he has an audience, I guess. Dude, Progressive Victory, you're pissing money down the drain. What are you doing paying this guy? He always has the shittiest arguments. Like he calls in my stream, I have an entire stream going on. It's like, Democrats are feigning outrage over this Trump going to Arlington Cemetery story. They don't really give a shit about the actual Gold Star families. Let's hear what these Gold Star families who lost family members in the attack in Afghanistan, let's see what they say about Biden and Kamala. Oh, they say that they've been disrespected, etc., etc. And Hutch wants to call in. And I'm like, okay, Hutch, what do you have to say about these Gold Star families? And he's like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Arlington. Now, remember, my whole argument is they don't really give a shit about disrespecting the troops, because if they did, they'd be willing to hear out what these families were saying. Instead, they just see it as an attempt to smear Trump. So he comes on and say, oh, you want to talk about what these Gold Star family members say? No, I just want to talk about the Arlington situation. And I'm like, yeah, right, you'll do anything to run from him. I was like, well, you concede that you don't give a shit what they say? I'll concede whatever. Now can we move on to talking about Trump at Arlington? He literally made my point for me. He thinks that was a good... Well, Rob raised his voice. That's how dumb he is. And his audience were like, Rob was mean. I thought Rob raised his voice. And by the way, isn't that funny? Like, all the criticism these dumbasses make, Rob raised his voice once. Rob talks fast. It's like, dude, you guys are fucking Destiny fans. All that dude does is yell and scream and talk at a rapid pace. I'm not going to make fun of Hutch's audience. He's got a bigger audience than me, so I'm not making fun of that. Just funny to me. Anyways, there you go. Hutch. Who used to talk about the Hunter Biden laptop? That was like months ago. We're talking about January 6, 2021. These people are so funny. That's not the first time they've done this shit. When I talk about Russiagate, they're like, that was a long time ago. Dude, your whole argument's January 6th. The alternate elector scheme, December 2020. My goodness. Funny shit. Anyways, back to the Rogan thing. So that was Trump's best moment. And then secondary was when he's talking to Joe Rogan about UFC. And you tell Rogan's a little, I don't want to say he's intimidated. He's nervous, probably a little nervous. Talking to a former president. Definitely the biggest guest Joe Rogan's ever got. And arguably the biggest. Who could at this point he get that's a bigger guest than Donald Trump? I guess Joe Biden? Or the actual sitting president? You know, a former president and possible next president. I guess the only thing that would be bigger is like the current president. Other than that, Taylor Swift, Putin, you know, someone that's like Putin's not as big or as famous as Trump, but he'd be a hard interview to get, so that might be a bigger guess. Ronaldo, maybe, yeah. But, you know, so probably a little nerves. But Trump's like asking him, what do you think about this fighter? What do you think about him? Man, you're really good at your job. And you can tell Rogan's like, I want to talk about you, not myself. But that shit humanizes Trump, again. And I know the Trump haters are like, who gives a shit? That's so stupid. It's because you're arguing against the guys that he's a subhuman monster. And so to listen to the guy like, oh, the guy likes fighting sports. He's interested in that. But that doesn't prove he's not a subhuman monster. True, it doesn't prove that. But what it shows to a bunch of people that may only impression of Trump might be what they've heard Stephen Colbert say, or what they hear Jake Tapper say, or 60 Minutes say, or the New York Times say is, this isn't really jiving with the picture that's been painted to me. But to me, the most interesting thing that Trump said that was insightful to me, that could also be used as maybe an argument against Trump, I'll be honest, but I don't think it is, was when Rogan starts and his first question's like, what's it like that first day in office? And I don't think Trump's really getting what he's saying. By the way, at this moment I'll say, Trump might not be technically correct in all the things he talks about historically, but he's like Joe Rogan in that sense. People make fun of Joe Rogan if he's wrong on a specific detail, but it's a form of intelligence to have such a recall on so many issues that you're not like Googling right there. So yeah, when he talked about Lincoln being depressed because his son Tad died, turns out it wasn't Tad, it was a different son. But he knew that story. The specific detail in that. Specific details matter if you're talking about like a specific policy position, which Trump's wrong about at times as well, as is every politician. But it's not really important if you're like, if I told you, I was like, yeah, my neighbor's son, Benjamin, like he hit a grand slam the other day, and if someone's like, that's not true, Benjamin was the pitcher, it was his other son, Ryan, that hit the grand slam, everyone's going to be like, okay, the story's still basically the same, you know. That's a lie. Y'all see how you got cognitive decline. Cool. Because I saw Trump messed up. He said Tad. It was the other kid. Okay. Anyways. Kamala Harris could never do that. She couldn't. She can't sit down and be just a person and have a person-to-person conversation for 3 hours. She can't do it. She just can't. Anyways, the part I was talking about, the Rogan interview that I thought was interesting, what Rogan was really asking was basically, do you kind of like go, oh shit, I won, now what? And even though Trump doesn't directly answer it, you could get that, yeah, that's basically what happened. Because as someone who's never been a politician, and he's like, I'm used to New York, I know people in New York, I don't know people in DC as well. All of a sudden you have to fill 10,000 positions in your cabinet. And Trump's like, you know, basically you fill 20 or 30 and then they do the rest. So you got to pick those 20 and 30 that you trust. And he basically admits, I know what the hell I was doing. Now you could say, well, that's a downside of Trump. That's why you want someone who's been a career politician. Well, the fact that he's been there once, he at least has an idea going in now. But to me, that gives me the slightest shred of hope that maybe this time he's more prepared. Maybe this time he's willing to listen to someone like a Steve Bannon, like Let us help you pick these people. Because everybody's going to blow smoke up the dude's ass. Your John Boltons, right? They're going to be crawling out of the woodwork. Christopher Wray is going to be like, oh, trust me, Mr. Trump. I know we've had our differences, and I know the FBI, but we've really made a change. We're on board with you, Mr. President. And then they're going to sabotage him again. So hopefully he's learned. Because last time he just kind of was like, I don't know. And there is this conundrum. If you're truly, and again, I don't care what you really think about Trump. Just think of it in the abstract. If you're a candidate that thinks that there is a swamp, right? And you want to drain that swamp, who is qualified to fill 10,000 positions to fight back against that swamp? Because the problem is, like you might say, Rob, you would be really good at advocating to drain the swamp. I would. Does that make me qualified to work at the FDA? Or the EPA? Or the IRS? What are my qualifications? Because theoretically, what you want, qualification-wise, forget about ideology. Qualification-wise, you want someone who has experience sort of administratively. But the problem is, if the swamp's that deep, everyone that would meet those qualifications probably is already part of the swamp. So you end up appointing people that, like John Bolton, that's like, oh, yeah, the swamp, of course, yes. It's a big culture here, but, I'm one of the good ones. Maybe this time he's learned his lesson. I hope. We'll see, maybe. If he wins, maybe we'll see. I'll pray. As soon as he appoints Mike Pompeo to something, I'm going to be like, dude didn't learn. But yeah, that's what I thought of the Rogan interview. I thought it was pretty good. Madison Square Garden event was pretty good as well. Controversy aside, it's pretty good. There are reasons to be optimistic when it comes to, is Trump going to win? You have the polls, real clear polling averages show that he's winning both the popular vote and he's winning the battleground vote. But it's close. Let me pour some water on the polls. Just because the polls have been wrong in the same direction for the past two presidential election cycles doesn't mean that'll be the case again. My gut feeling is most of the polls have no clue. It's my gut feeling. I think that you had good polls like Rasmussen that's trying to do the right thing, that they've been pretty consistent the entire time. But many of these polls that heavily had Kamala winning for months and months and months, even had, what's his name, David Plouffe that works for the Kamala campaign, came out a couple weeks ago and was like, we never believed those polls. Our internal polls never said we're up 6-7 points. Never said that. We always knew it was close. And I said what will happen was, what those polls will do is regress back to the mean so that it's basically a 50-50 toss-up at the end, and then no matter who wins, they could say, we were basically right. And it seems that's what many did. Now, to their credit, places like Rasmussen the whole time was bucking the trend and was like, no, we see Trump with a slight lead, even in the popular vote. That's what they've been saying for months. So kudos to them, if that's how it comes out. But how are they adjusting their methodology for the problems that they've had in the past? Maybe they've over-adjusted. I don't know. But if you're the type of person that views polls, it's certainly you'd rather be in the position of Donald Trump than Kamala Harris right now. And that shows. That shows from the people involved in the media to the people involved in the campaigns, right down to the streamers. You could see the quiet desperation from many of these streamers that are Kamala fans. You could see it. I'm still predicting Trump will lose, but I'm just saying, when you look at just the polling, I think clearly the bulk of it favors Trump. Then you have the early voting numbers. Same thing. The early voting numbers are much better for Trump now than they were in 2020. So you might say, that's starting to add up. But how many of those early voters are voters that would vote election day? And how many Democrat early voters in 2020 only did so because of COVID, and this time they're going to come out election day? So election day, let's say last time Republicans won by 15 percentage points. I'm just pulling a number out of my ass. So let's say they lost the mail-in vote by 30 points, but they won election day vote by 15 points. Well, maybe now they only lose the mail-in vote by 20 points, but they only win election day by 10 points. You see what I mean? So I don't know. Now, there are people that are looking into this and talking about it's not a direct one-to-one correlation. A lot of early voters are sort of low propensity voters or low energy voters. So a lot of them wouldn't go out election day, but they will if you give them weeks vote by mail beforehand. Could be true. We'll have to see. But again, if you're looking at the polling, I think you'd rather be in Trump's team. If you're looking at the early voting and historically what that means, certainly it looks better for Trump. For example, in my state of Pennsylvania, I believe Trump lost Pennsylvania by about 80,000 votes in 2020. And the Democrats had built up a firewall of, I believe, 1 million votes. Close to that. That means before anyone went to the polls on election day, even though they weren't counted yet, the voting that had already taken place before that, Democrats were up 1 million. That meant that Trump had to win by 1,000,001, basically, you know what I mean, on election day, which was unable to overcome. Now they're up 300,000. So if Trump lost by 80,000 and the election day turnout's the exact same on both sides, and he was losing the pre-election ballots by 1 million, and now he's only losing by 300,000, that would mean Trump would win by about 600,000 votes in Pennsylvania, which is remarkable. But it's not going to be the exact same turnout on election day. It's not. There'll probably be more Democrats that show up election day than previously, and probably less Republicans if more voting by mail. So the question is how much? But certainly looking at that data, you would say, oh, Democrats be getting nervous. And then I think when you look at the actions of the campaigns, the aforementioned Bob Casey sort of like, right? The fact that Kamala's going to places like Texas, Trump's going to places like Virginia, I think. Looks like the campaigns are like, Trump's campaign's like, we're up in this thing, and Kamala's campaign's like, we got to make up ground. And then if you look at people like Mark Halperin from Newsmax, who I think has been very good at analyzing this, his reporting shows that internally, Kamala's team's pretty worried. But he also is quick to say anything could change at any time, and we'll see. You never know what'll happen. So given all of that, it's clear to me, based on all of those metrics, that at this point, it'll be close, but you'd rather be on Trump's side. So why do I think Trump will lose? Because the Democrats won't let him win. That's why. Maybe their ballot harvesting was more efficient than the past. Maybe the fact that in places like New Mexico, or was it Nevada? I think Nevada, they're now going to accept ballots that are even postmarked 3 days after the election. Maybe it's because in places like Pennsylvania, they're sending out, I think, 30,000 ballots overseas, 15,000 of those I've seen reported, and this could all be bullshit. I don't know. 15,000 of those ballots are from people that haven't provided ID or aren't in the military or anything of that nature. My head looks and says, I think Trump's ahead. My gut says he ain't gonna win. But it's not impossible. You have to get everyone you know out to the ballot. You have to. Every one of us. You have to crawl over broken glass to get to the... Everyone. Don't lose any personal relationships over politics, please. That's my advice. That's how I try to live my life. But there's no shame in pestering people a little that you think will vote. Get them out there to vote on election day. Every vote matters. We're talking about 2020 was decided in 3 states by 40,000 votes. I have 130 people watching right now. Let's assume that all of us vote for Trump and we all get 10 people. That's 1,400 votes. Some states that were decided by 10,000. So the idea that, like, that's what it's going to take. And maybe you're in a state that's not a swing state, that's going to vote blue no matter what, or red no matter what. Who gives a shit? Get out there and vote. The popular vote, although it's not important as far as a win-loss, would be a repudiation of so much of the Democrat bullshit. If they lose the popular vote and the Electoral College after saying that their opponent is Hitler, what does that do to their messaging? Another factor. Why do you think people like Jeff Bezos are saying, like, Washington Post isn't going to endorse? I think it could be a sign that they think Trump's going to win, or it could be a sign that they think it's going to be close enough that they're trying to give an olive branch to Trump, like, listen. Yeah, USA Today, LA Times, didn't endorse. So, there's reasons to be optimistic. The other thing is, I have to be honest, and I've been honest about this. I've been wrong in my predictions in the past. So, in 2016, I said, they ain't gonna let Trump win. And he did. So, I certainly could be wrong this time. I'll be more than happy to be wrong. Absolutely will be. And the other thing is, I'm biased. I work best when I think I'm an underdog. When I think my side's the underdog. I think if we all have the mindset, we're 2 points down, we're 2 points down, we're 2 points down, that will encourage us all to work even harder. That's what I think. So I'm biased to wanting to think that way. And I think that clouds my judgment sometimes. So when I see someone like Mike Cernovich, like, don't be black-pilled, Trump's up, but we got to keep working, could absolutely be right. And his message, I don't give a shit how you come to the conclusion, keep busting your ass. Get out there and vote. However you come to that conclusion, get out there and vote because Trump's losing. Get out there and vote because Trump's winning, but we need to overcome the margin of cheating. Get out there and vote because Trump's winning by more than any president since Reagan. And we need to just give the middle finger to all these people. Whatever your rationale is, if the conclusion is bust your ass to get out there to vote for Trump and these other Republicans, that's fine by me. I choose to think that he's a couple points down. If you do it thinking he's a couple points up or he's winning by a landslide, fine, cool. I'm not really that interested. And I don't think a lot of people tune in to me for that sort of analysis or cope. I will tell you that immediately following the election, like, so let's say the election's Tuesday, November 5th. So that means we'll have the results by, like, February, I would guess, conservatively. We'll finally know who's president by, like, maybe February 15th or something like that. So after that period of time, because we're a first world country, supposedly the richest, most sophisticated country in the world, but it takes us weeks or months or years or whatever to count ballots at this point. Yay, democracy. Once we know the results, don't get me wrong. In 2016, I didn't have a channel, but my friends that were lefties, I knew how much it hurt them, and so I wasn't really pouring salt in the wounds. And I've always been that kind of guy. But I am going to celebrate this time. If he wins, I will. So the two possible scenarios with my show and my life are this. Trump wins. I'll be celebrating election night. But I don't know how much I'll be like, oh, let's go over to Destiny Stream and fuck with them. I don't think I'll be doing that. I might be looking at clips and going, ha! But I'm not going to really poke the bear that much. But I will celebrate that night. I will. And then a lot of what my channel will be in the coming weeks after that is trying to talk left-wingers off a ledge, including people I personally know, but then other people that I stream with. Because they're going to freak out. And what I don't want is people freaking out to the point where they commit acts of violence, which no doubt some will. But any little bit I could do to try to alleviate that, I'll try to do. Spurging done live that night's one thing, or the night we know that. But I'm saying after that, And if Trump wins, then my life goes on basically, very similarly. If Trump loses, then a lot of what my channel will be in the meeting following of that is trying to talk right-wingers off a ledge. Just like in 2020, when there were people coming on my chat saying, the Tree of Liberty needs to be refreshed with the blood of tyrants. And I was like, don't do that shit. Don't Fed post me. Don't do something stupid. We're better than this. And I know the lefties will be flooding me. The Destiny fans, the Pisco fans, they're going to be coming on. I'll have more people watching. I'll have 300, 400 people watching live. And that's okay. I don't mind them. Get your kicks in. That's fine. I really don't mind. You're going to do it, right? I'm going to do it to some degree if our side wins. So if they do it to me, I'll be like, yeah, okay. Okay, that's fine. And that's how I was in 2022, and that's how I was in 2020. I'm not going to be screaming at this guy. I'll just be like, shit, that sucks. But I still have a really awesome family, and I'm still going to love my life. So, Oh, I know. They'll accuse me of flipping out and stuff. Who's going to... TL1524, thanks for the $5, says, who's going to cry more if Trump wins? Destiny, Pisco, Hutch, Pondering, Dylan. Hutch admitted to crying when Trump won in 2016, so there's a good candidate. I don't think Destiny will cry. He'll just say that Trump supporters deserve to die. He'll spurg out. There is a serious consideration, honest to goodness. Like, this sucks to say. It really does. But as a streamer, I get threats here and there. It's not bad. I get less than you might imagine. The worst sort of threats I get are when people like threaten your job and shit. But I have had threats on my life. I could really imagine post this election if Trump wins and I would be like, let's say hypothetically that I go over to Destiny's channel. I'm like, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. I could get killed. That's no joke. Does anyone think that's... I'm not saying by Destiny. And I'm not even saying Destiny would advocate that. I'm not. But I'm just saying there will be people... Mark Halperin said this as well. It will be an incredible mental health crisis. Incredible. And... I mean, if there's someone that's got this parasocial relationship with the streamer and they feel like... Am I debating Econoboy in a bit? He's in the waiting room for some reason. Says someone. No, I can't bring anyone on while I'm on my phone. I don't know how to bring a Discord call on when I'm on my phone. If I was on my computer, I'd bring Econoboy on. But I'm not. So if you can hear me, Econoboy, I can't bring you on, man. I could talk to you after I'm done streaming privately. But I can't do it on stream. So... but, people are going to be broken, man. Sorry. I just don't know how. I'll monkey with it someday. I'll do a test stream and see if I can figure it out. But yeah, I'm literally just on YouTube only on my phone. That's why I don't have all the OBS bells and whistles here. But anyways, hope things are going well, Connor boy. But yeah, that's it. Life will go on. It's a weird thing to say because I think seriously it's a very serious election. And quite possibly... the war on disinformation, if Kamala wins, is going to ramp up worse than it's ever been, which could quite possibly mean the end of my show and the end of a lot of shows that you might like. And there's a bunch of other bad shit that will happen. But my life will go on. So it's weird. I'm not just going to sit here and fearmonger you like, if Kamala wins, it's going to be apocalypse. I mean, we could end up in World War III. I guess it could happen if Trump wins as well. It's more likely, I think, if Kamala wins, but nonetheless... I can't, I'm not really that type of person. So I do think it's very important, but my life will go on. And it will go on for you too, if you're a Trump hater. Your life will go on. So don't do anything rash and unhinged. I'm not going to say you're effing around and finding out if you're at a Kamala rally or whatever. That ain't me. That's Econoboy's buddies. On the left, that's the Destinies of the world. His progressive victory pals. That's who they are. That's not who we are. That's not who I am. So, all right. Game plan. Tomorrow I'll probably be streaming sometime between 6 and 8 p.m., probably closer to 6 p.m. I don't know how long of a show I'll do. Thursday it'll be very similar. I'm working out getting a guest lined up for Thursday. We shall see. Friday, I'll be introducing the Hippy Dippy panel. That'll probably only be like 15 minutes. And then Saturday at 8 a.m., baby, that's it. 24-hour live stream. Actually, it's 25 hours because we roll back the clock that. That'll be streamed probably on all of my channels. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I have 2 sitting congressmen that are confirmed that they'll be there. A bunch of other people in the Pennsylvania GOP. So I got some guests with a little bit of juice, which is nice, including the most senior Republican in the House of Representatives from Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I think it'll be... I also have some state reps, I think, that are going to be joining me. One of my favorites, Russ Diamond, I think, is confirmed. He's great. Dude, you guys are going to love Russ. He's a fucking maniac, man. He's a good guy working in Harrisburg for us. He's one of my favorites. Good friend of mine, Doug McClinko, is Bradford County Commissioner. I think he's going to join us. I think the Pennsylvania GOP treasurer, Stacey Garrity, I think, has confirmed that she's going to be joining us. So we'll definitely have people both at the GOP apparatus and at the elected official level here in Pennsylvania. And then obviously we're going to have people like Andrew Wilson's going to be on. I haven't talked to Andrew, but he assured me he'd be able to get some guests. So I'm hoping for people that I like talking to, like Jim Bob. He's always fun to talk to. Rachel Wilson might call in as well. And then I'm still reaching out and trying to get like Scott Pressler on. I reached out to Dave Smith, haven't had any luck. Sean, actual justice lawyer, confirmed that he's going to try to make it. So I think that would be good. Aircraft Sparky confirmed with me. I'm going to text some folks tonight, like Drone Tech Politics, Let's Be Frank, Sarah Kane. Those are all good people. Doug Dakota, he might come on. That's solid. Of course, my friend Todd Bartley, who is a journalist here in Pennsylvania that I did a radio show with, I think he'll call in. And then sort of my co-host for the day will be my friend Carlos Saldivia. If you've been a fan of the show for a while, you know Carlos. Carlos is also a maniac that you guys will like if you don't know him. He talks too much, but so do I. So when you get us together, he's the perfect sort of co-host for a 25-hour stream because neither of us ever shut up. So it'll be good. AJW, yeah. I wonder, is he Puerto Rican? No, that'll be even more fun to talk to him then. Yeah, I think the lineup's going to... Lecture Fan, I forgot to reach out to Lecture Fan. I will get in touch with him. I wanted to... The Custa brothers, Alex Custa and his brother that I did their show, I wanted to try to get in touch with them. It's just been so brutal with my work. It's tough for me to reach out to all these people. So I'm really going to hit the ground running here the next couple days and see what I can do. It's not just about getting streamers or people that have big audiences, but it's also about getting people that I think will have interesting things to say. So what you all could do is, that day I'll be there 24 hours. Obviously, unless you're a maniac, you're not going to watch live all 24, 25 hours of it. But if you could recommend it to your friends or things like that, we're going to have a lot of fun. And it'll be different. It's not going to be me. I just want to be clear with everyone. There's going to be people that are calling in that I have disagreements with, particularly people in the GOP, that I would be able to say, you signed this bill and that bill sucks. But I'm not going to do that. That's not the point. I am absolutely being a cheerleader. That is the point of this show, to get people out to vote for Trump. It's not to have infighting between libertarians and conservatives or Christian nationalists or paleocons or... It's not the point. Everybody knows I've done that infighting and will continue to do so after the election. The point is to convince as many people as possible to vote for Republicans and Donald Trump. That's the point. It is not the time and place to sit here and argue about, but I don't like this bill, I don't like Mitch McConnell, that's not the point. So, before you think I've gone soft, and you will see a different side of me interviewing people, which is a different side. There's still going to be plenty of me talking. Trust me, it's 25 hours. So, but I think I'm a very good interviewer. So, yeah, folks. Yeah. No 19th Amendment talk, really. I mean, if people bring stuff up, they bring stuff up. But my point's not to try to argue with them. So that's the purpose of this. So I don't want you to think that, like, I've lost my edge or anything like that. That's not what's going on. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So put it on your calendar, November 2nd, 8 a.m. Tell your friends, tell your family. One thing is you get a little nervous about when you're a streamer like me. I do a big live stream like that and I get a congressman to come on and there's only 30 people watching. Doesn't do a lot. You kind of feel bad that someone took time out of their day like that to come talk to 30 people. So let's get a big audience for them. I think that'd be great. Let's see if we can get up to 500 concurrent live streamers. I think that's a reasonable goal. So that's what we'll shoot for. We'll shoot for 500, and I'll shoot for a commitment. We want to get at least everybody that's watching to confirm that they will go vote for Trump, or not everyone, but huge portion of the people to confirm that not only will they go vote for Trump, but they're going to try to convince at least one other person. If we do that, if we can get 500 people that watch it, even if it's not consecutive, if we get 500 people and they can each confirm that they're going to vote for Trump and get someone else to as well, that's 1,000. Right? More than I've willingly spent 25 hours of my life for that. It's cool by me. So let's try to do it, and then we can have an awesome celebration. One other thing to say, if you haven't subscribed to me on YouTube, please consider doing so. I'm very close to getting 10,000 subs, which for me is very humbling. And once we get to 10,000 subs, we'll do a special stream. So who knows, maybe we'll hit 10,000 and we'll be celebrating a Trump Republican victory. And it'll be a blast. It'll be a good show. So that's the game plan. So should see you all tomorrow night around 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, sometime around there. And then I'll remind you all again of these upcoming shows. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, especially the people that donated. I'm trying to put money back into the show. I hope it's showing. I have some people that have really helped me with the show that I'm trying to throw some dollars to that are helping me with like editing and shit. By the way, shout out to Black Elk, who as always is a fantastic editor. Also, I'm working with a group called Alchemy Core that's working on editing shorts with me. You'll be able to tell the shorts I do versus the shorts they do based on the production value. So they're going to try to give me 15 shorts a month. So you're going to see those. We already had one that came out. If you go and you look at the short that's called He Really Fell For It, that's their short that they did. So I think you'll see the difference in quality. So I'm really trying to put money into the show, to grow the show. So any money that you send, that's the idea. We're trying to put it back into the show by paying people to help with editing, marketing, buying better equipment. Thank you so much, Nate, for $2. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So that's the goal. So, all right, we'll see y'all between 6 and 8 p.m. tomorrow night, depending on when I have dinner and what I have going on. You guys are the best. Thank all of you. As always, have a good one.